Hi everyone, welcome. You're with Choosing Freedom. My name's James Kelly, and today we have got a very special guest in Tom Barnett joining us. We've also got a couple of Choosing Freedom community members tuning in, and this is the Navigating the WA Lockdowns webinar. It's Wednesday the 3rd, and we are 3 days into the lockdown here in WA, and we're looking forward to bringing you some empowering information that will hopefully help you ground and hold steady in what feels like a pretty challenging time, especially with the bushfires that are floating around the Perth area as well. So we're really looking forward to sharing some information and pulling together the beautiful community here in Perth that really do value freedom and would like to learn practical steps to safeguarding our existing freedoms and expanding it in the future. So the disclaimer, this video is for educational or entertainment purposes only and should not be used as a substitute for professional, medical or legal advice. We do not provide legal or tax advice. We do not claim to be an expert in any particular field. One should always seek competent, effective assistance of counsel regarding all legal or tax related issues. That's the general gist of it. Most people know the song and dance we have to do with that. So just keep that in mind as we go on. We're just sharing information that hopefully you can take on board and apply critical thought and see what resonates and what you feel can be beneficial for you and your family and your community. So Tom, welcome. It's great to have you on
Thank
the
you.
webinar.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
You've been pumping out a lot of content around this kind of lawful arena, which is becoming quite important as time goes on, and a lot of people are starting to look more into that.
Yeah, it's getting to be a big area. It's one of those areas that it's a strange one because it's what we should have been taught when we were born, obviously through schooling and things. But it's a double-edged sword because if used the right way, it's very powerful. If used the wrong way or put in the wrong hands, it's almost like it can be very detrimental as well. So it's really important, I think, to come at it from where you are and not try to use more than you're actually able to use. Like putting a weapon in somebody's hands that's not trained with it, they could do more harm to themselves or others than they are aware of.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad that you brought that up straight away because that's an important point that often gets missed and people can wind up in situations that they're not really ready for. So
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we wanted to just highlight very quickly the intention of today's webinar was, and Tom, you already touched on it right there almost, is that it's not so much about just gathering as much information and knowledge as you can and heading out and going head on with the state and the officers and anything like that. It's really about what this community has always tried to focus on, and that is the continual facilitation of each individual's unique creative potential inside so that we can continue to shine that and then create the world that we really want to see. And the thing is that right now, many of us are doing that, but now there's these restrictions. So we're having to address those restrictions, but really the tools to navigate this unique space that we're now in, the tools are only there so that we can get back to creating the world we want. And it's really important that we always come back to that we are active. And so here we're just trying to find a way where we can navigate this space with the least amount of conflict and tension, find that middle path, which I think, Tom, having spoken to some people that you've kind of guided in different ways, you've highlighted it well, that it's not a simple case of do I comply or do I go to war? Because that can be very taxing, and many of us, most of us, I dare say, are not equipped to go to war at all with a system that's currently so out of control. So just keep that in mind, that that's what today is about, guys. We are looking for the path of least resistance, and we're looking for ways to really maximize our own personal energy so we can continue to come together and make beautiful projects and build all the things we want to see more of in life together as a community. So with that said, if we could start, Tom, just with a summary of where we're at in your mind, some of the key points I know people are thinking a lot about at the moment are the issues around the masks, restrictions on traveling and moving outside at the moment. There's the idea of, we're seeing a bit about how police are making examples of sovereign citizens in particular, or just people that are trying to exercise their rights. So there's a few different points there. Maybe you could just, in your own words, kind of share a bit about that.
There's a few different ways to look at what's going on at the moment. And one is that most people that would be listening to this will know that it's all very well orchestrated. There's nothing like random about it, and it's for a purpose. So it's always good to consider what the purpose is. Do we play a part in it? Do we let it run its course, and what have you? Does everybody have a role to play, and what is that role? I think that's an important question to ask. And that asking those questions can help to guide the actions, the thoughts and actions that we then take as a result, and also the consequences, because there's an old saying that there's no right or wrong. There are only thoughts, actions, and consequences. And as long as we take responsibility for each of those, then we can't do right or wrong, so to speak. We're just doing and being, which is kind of where we're supposed to be. So as far as what's going on at the moment, in my eyes, and this is just my opinion, I think it's just a well-orchestrated way to rid some of the system of its current gunk for a new guard or a new power system to be put into play under the cover of the smokescreen of a fake virus. So as things change, it means that some of the rules will change, because we're now playing under a different set of rules. So, well, that's kind of a wrong way to put it. So I don't really see them as rules. I see them as like guidelines, offers, because either way, we're always dealing in commerce. But what's happening at the moment is they're trying to squeeze people in various places at various times in order to see, first of all, what the reaction will be and where they stand. And also to, put into effect their agenda, which is to, as I said before, just get some of the people out that are currently in power and then get other people in. And by in power, I don't mean right politics, so to speak. I mean the corporate structure, which relates to the money and the fiat system, the cryptocurrency system, and resources such as gold and silver, and then other resources that people probably don't need to know about at this stage. But that's what we're really dealing with. And what we're looking at is just the facade, the part that goes on in plain sight. And then the rest is kind of, happening more under the cover, sort of, so to speak. So what does that mean? Well, that means that there is going to be levels of corruption, high levels of corruption, in fact, and misdirection. And it's this misdirection part that we can play around with. The part that's the dodgy part, the part that is, really not playing by the law or anything like that, the corrupt side, personally, is something I stay out of. Why? Well, it's backed by guns and people in dark places that you probably don't even know exist. When I was working in private security, we knew of all the different types of police that there are. And they don't tell you all the different types of police, but there's like layers of police turning into military, turning into private paramilitary. And you're just dealing with people that will stop at nothing to protect their best interest, which is the bottom line. And the general public never even knows that they exist. And so I tend not to want to deal with the corrupt, because it's like poking a tiger in the eye. Probably not the best idea, especially just as an individual who goes about his day, doesn't own guns and all that sort of stuff, and is outnumbered by more than 2 people. So that's where I'm at. Where I like to deal with and exercise my right of power is in the bit that's the in-between, the part that's a little bit up in the air. And when we're dealing with just typical frontline people, and then challenging what is put out in the narrative into the mainstream, which is on the street. Beyond that, into the corruption, I won't touch, but what's on the street, that's where I like to exercise my right of power. So does that give enough of a summary of kind of how I see it at the moment, or do you want me to go a bit more into detail about any of those points?
No, I think that's a pretty good introduction to how you see things. And I would say that most people here are in agreement. pretty accurate summary there. If there's anything that our community members would like to add, then please jump in at any point. Yeah, otherwise, I mean, specifically, they're obviously happy. Specifically, you know, a lot of people are worried about the masks issue. So the idea, you know, people asking questions whether they can go outside without the mask on, or can they?
Yeah. I can give you the simple answer. The simple answer is no, you don't have to wear a mask or sanitize your hands or scan a QR code. The law says that. The part that people are going to get stuck on or are confused by is how do I actually use that when I'm dealing with people that either don't listen or don't know, or a combination of the two. That's the issue. So the law is 100% no, that's not right. You do not have to wear a mask. You don't have to quarantine. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to stay at home. None of that applies. So I'll explain why. When there is a discrepancy between state and federal, they're not even laws, they're acts. Acts aren't law. I'll just quickly explain that. So moving forward, it just makes more sense. So we are governed by law, and law is natural law. Natural law is essentially just do no harm. That's pretty much it. So it's pretty much love thy neighbor, love thy creator. That's it. In the private, those are laws. Everything in the public, which is anything that relates to entities which are non-living, those are all in the realm of the public, which is, you know, the non-living, non-substance, it's fiction. And so that's color of law. It's not law, it's color of law. And they all apply to entities. So color of law are acts, codes, statutes, legislations, any of that. They're not law, they're color of law. So we can use that to our advantage, which we'll get into as the call goes on. But to set the scene, even within those that apply in the public, anything that is a federal act, code, or statute overrides anything that conflicts for a state act, code, or statute. So if the federal, which is the national act, which is the Biosecurity Act, says that only an individual who is showing symptoms of some kind of illness can be quarantined or asked to wear a mask or asked to get a test for some kind, then no state can override that. If there's any conflict between state and federal overrules every single time. So that's why Western Australia can't legislate against its people, or can't legislate for its people against the federal acts, codes, and statutes. Okay, so that's the premise. So why does it become a little bit difficult? Well, the police, which are the ones that essentially are the ones on the ground enforcing anything, right? They are hired by the state and they're indoctrinated by the state. Myself and other people have spoken directly to police and asked them the question, first of all, hey, look, just out of interest, if there's a federal, like we just call them laws when we're talking to them because they won't go into the color of law thing. If there's a federal law, can the state law override that? And they'll generally go, no. And then you'll start to talk to them about this, that, and the other. And then they'll go cold and they go, no, I only deal with criminal law. You know, they don't go into the civil, which is what we're dealing with when we're dealing with, the Biosecurity Act, for example. It can be classed as a criminal code or offense if you refuse something. That's why they'll write it up as a criminal offense, but that's just a bit of BS within the legal system. Anyway, the point being, you're dealing with police which either just don't want to hear it or don't know, or both, because they answer to their superiors and they answer to the bottom line. Every cop is on a quota and must put in a certain number of tickets every month in order to fund the precinct. They all work on ABNs. The police, Perth, whatever precinct of Western Australia itself, they're all corporations. They all have company numbers, ABNs, all that. People probably know all that already, but it just shows or highlights that what you're dealing with is a corporate representative, not somebody who is there for the peace of the public, as they are marketed to be. So when we deal with them, we have to deal with them in a very specific way, and it is situation dependent. For example, there are plenty of people who've tried to get through borders or, avoid testing or whatever. And based on what myself or other people have told them, some succeed and some don't. So the question then becomes, why do some succeed and why do some not? And what it comes down to is either not reading the situation or not actually knowing the material well enough to bring it across in the right way. Because at the end of the day, you're just communicating to another man or woman. You're not dealing with the law. The law's just, it doesn't exist. It's a person, man or a woman that you're dealing with. And you have to take that as the most important thing, because if you don't communicate well, they'll get their back up, and it doesn't matter what you say. They just need to protect their bottom line and or their ego, because that's kind of what their position entails. And they don't want to be going back to their superiors or their workmates saying that, oh yeah, no, I asked these people or I offered them a fine and they all said no. That doesn't look good for them. So they have to try to enforce it a bit more, or play dumb and say, look, I don't want to hear that. My job is to enforce this directive or this law. That's what they'll say. We can do some role play. I think, the people who put us together wanted to do a bit of role play, which we can do. And that way we can go through a bit of the way that police will actually interact and not listen to what you're saying, and how to get around that, because that's what gets people really stumped. Is they learn a little bit from YouTube, and it's great. I do recommend learning. You learn what you can from where you can. It's better than nothing, but be very careful about how you apply it, is the message that I give. Because when a policeman who is trying to be intimidating doesn't let you go the way you think it's going to go, you're generally stumped, and then you're in hot water. So you need to understand the way somebody will, a police officer or a security guard or a health official will speak, because they speak in a very specific way. They're trained not to answer questions, which also none of you should do either. Shouldn't answer questions. They're trained to redirect anything. They don't answer what you say. They redirect it, and they'll make claims, and they'll make false claims. And your job is to know how to pick them up on that and use it against them. So that's getting a bit down the track, though. I always liken that to the martial arts analogy. Your job in martial arts, generally in a traditional style, is to use somebody's force or attack against them. It's not necessarily to go out and harm them or put on a show of bravado, but that also takes a lot of skill and a lot of time spent training to be able to do that. And the law is exactly the same. It doesn't come just from learning a script or a set of things to say or principles. It's internalizing those so that when something comes, you're not thinking about the response or how do I handle this? It's just part of your being, and your being knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are a free man or a woman, and these people making offers have no power over you. But that's a state of being. And anything other than that is going to be something you're projecting as a persona, and it's fake. It's fake confidence, or it's fake knowledge, or whatever it is. And you're dealing with somebody that's been in their business for 15 years or so, they smell it a mile off, and they won't let you off. So that's why they really test people heavily that they really don't know their stuff. But those who have it as their state of being, they're the ones that get through border patrols, out of quarantine, out of testing, things like that. Before we go any further, I just want to make a really important key point, and that is that we are not trying to get out of anything. People keep asking the question, how do I get out of or refuse testing, quarantining, whatever? We don't do that. That is putting already a combative or negative energy into whatever the offer or the situation is. So rather than say it that way, and it might sound trivial, but it's actually really important, the way we want to speak about this is how do I maintain my autonomy? How do I maintain my rights? Not how do I refuse, resist, or get out of. Getting out of assumes that you've done something wrong or you're in something already, which you're not. So don't put yourself in there when you're not already in there. That you'd probably get that, right? That mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the subtleties that you're picking up on, because they're overlooked so often, and you're just going exactly to where I know many of us in this community want to be focusing on, how we can actually embody this information. And you did mention that we are going to go into some role plays with one of the community members. And so just for all those listening, that we will get there in the second hour. And that you've said, Tom, that's like, almost in your opinion, that's been the missing link in a lot of people's educational process, is that they haven't actually run the role plays and the simulations to start to really embody what the information that they've been absorbing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the role play I find key. So the people that got us together, I did quite a bit of role playing with them, and some of it came off flawless. But as soon as there was something that wasn't really expected, or I was playing more of a authoritarian role, it didn't go so well, and which is normal. And that's why it's so important to get together within either Zoom groups or in person or over the phone or however you want to do it, and just pretend to be a police officer or a health officer when you're dealing with your friends or your community. It's really important to drill it to the point where, I sometimes say to people, well, just practice in the mirror, and that has its place, and you should definitely do that if there's no other option, but it doesn't take the place of real world scenarios, because you know what's coming. If you're doing it in the mirror, you're just rehearsing lines. So when somebody gives you an oddball or something out of left field, you have to learn how to come from your being, not I memorized these lines. It's not about that, which it will be to start with. And that's the point. It will be remembering lines. Oh, I should say this because he's just said that, or she just said this, or was a bit of a Nazi, so I'll do this now. That's how it starts, and it's part of the process. So I guess what I'm saying is that we need to do that and go through that. So when you go to apply that for a real situation, keep in mind where you are in that development. Keep in mind how well you've done in your role play. So that doesn't mean don't use it. It just means be careful and be polite with it. Use it in like a gentle way. Don't go in going, well, you can't do this, and you don't know the Biosecurity Act, and all that sort of stuff. If you don't really know it, won't go well. However, if you're well-versed and well-trained, you can be as hard as you want. So what I'm saying is it depends on where you are in your own development. Don't think you have to go out and apply all of it. Just use parts of it, the parts that you're comfortable with, and then you can get through. You can be a lot more successful than somebody who knows a lot more but hasn't embodied it yet, and they try to use more. Same as martial arts, you generally only need 1 or 2 techniques. Like somebody in jiu-jitsu who's really good will use an armbar or a choke, and that's it. They don't need to do leg locks and triangles and then flying arm. They don't need to do any of that. They can use one technique every time and it's successful, because the basics are what work in all situations. You don't have to get fancy or know more than the next guy, or that whole idea that I need to read one more book before I'm competent, or I need to do one more course before I can. It's not really like that. So just to reiterate, don't be afraid to use it. Just be very aware of where you are in your development to determine how far you push things, is essentially what I'm saying. And that knowledge of where you are comes from role play.
Yeah, excellent advice. And I love the analogy of the martial artist, and especially Aikido. I picture Aikido where it's absolutely the harder they come at you, then the harder they fall away. You just turn that force back on them. And again, that's the whole point. That's what we're trying to promote here, is that it's just this form of self-defense, or even just maintaining autonomy, because you're going about your life trying to create a better world, and they're trying to throw some hurdles in front of us. We're not going out there seeking hurdles. We don't want to go out there and start kicking over as many hurdles as we can and causing a ruckus and getting all this attention. Yeah. We want to be able to go to see the people we need to see, to make the plans that we need to plan for the projects that we need to be implementing, to create the networks and the infrastructure that we can completely bypass the madness that's happening. But we need to go about that in a smart way now, because they've put some roadblocks. So yeah, I love what you're saying, bro. And the chat list, the chat's comments here, everyone is loving it too. So we might get to so one of the things you said was talking about the police, and they're the ones that are actually enforcing these things. So they're the interface between us and the agenda. So I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about diffusing the fear of police that many people have, and is increasing, because they are somewhat cherry picking instances to make it look like 100% of the time you will get crushed. And after we talk about all of this, I'd like to hear some of your experiences through people you've kind of spoken to that haven't been crushed, and that kind of highlight that there are ways to get around it. And so if we can get to that after we just touch on different ways of diffusing the fear around police. One thing that I can comment on straight off the bat, before we kind of go to your field of knowledge, Tom, is a point that we wanted to make, and that's just comprehending that the police are just men and women out there at the end of the day, trying to make a living, trying to make ends meet, going home most likely to a family, trying to tuck their child in, keep their child safe, even though we might disagree on what actually is necessary in order to keep a safe household. So they're holding many of the same values and human qualities that we all hold. And just initially, if we can come out of the head, come out of the ego, and just connect on that bridge of compassion and see that they are just like us in many ways. We just differ drastically often in how we want to achieve, the safety and security and happiness that we all want in life. So starting from that point and trying to see beyond the badge, beyond the uniform, see the man, see the woman, see that a lot of their erroneous projections are coming from a place of fear and ignorance, and we should have compassion for those that live deeply in fear and deeply in ignorance and delusion. So if we can hold on to that, we might be able to go a little bit deeper where you come in, Tom, equipping ourselves with knowledge, getting that strength from knowledge. And maybe you can talk a bit about what most people are pretty aware of now when it comes to the public versus private, the straw man, the fact that the police are corporations, it's all commerce, they're trying to contract with you. Talk a little bit about that, and maybe some of the basic principles that you would share with people like the community members that will join us soon. What you might share about the basic principles when engaging the police in order just to soften this anxiety that a lot of people are developing about going outside and running into the uniform.
Yeah, sure. It is a big thing. I use the example a lot. People can be driving their car and they'll see a cop car behind them and they've got license and registration. They're not speeding. They know they're doing nothing wrong. But their heart will start beating faster because there's a cop car behind them. It's really common. And so we have this indoctrinated fear pattern surrounding authority in general, but, specifically police who have progressively become more, the way they dress, the way their cars are dressed, all that sort of stuff. It's become progressively more intimidating on purpose because they used to just get around in a light blue shirt, looked very respectable, and their car was a nice white car with a bit of blue on it. Now they've got like a battle dress kind of looking highway patrol cars, and they're dressed in dark blue combat looking stuff half the time.
Highly militarized, eh?
Yeah, so it's very much done on purpose. We already know that. So again, to reiterate what you just said is that they are just people at the end of the day. I've spoken to quite a few police, especially the ones involved in the Cops Are COVID Truth movement. And they tell us, they say, look, we don't know what's happening one day to the next. We come in this week and we're told this. We come in the next day, we're told that. We have no idea what's going on. And they're just doing what they're told, essentially. Now, that's the issue because a lot of them just do what they're told and they don't question it, because questioning it means questioning their security, because their security is tied up in their paycheck and they don't want to lose their job or be reprimanded by superiors or whatever. But there are still quite a number of them who do listen or are able to question or are able to use their own better judgment and not just follow what they were told that morning. So we'll deal with, I guess, both ways that we really see these people. So first of all,
can I ask Tom quickly,
yeah,
just before we move on, when you have those conversations and they share the fact that they just come into office and the rules have changed and they've got to go enforce it and they don't really know what the hell's going on, what do you see as their kind of emotional state having to enforce that way? Are they uncomfortable like about it? Are they?
Yeah, they're definitely uncomfortable. That's why some of them are speaking out about it. And the ones that aren't are just kind of really, like you said, they've probably got a kid they got to go look after and they feed them. And look, to be honest, a lot of police, without putting them down, they're not well-educated people. So it's like, this is their ticket to lifelong, a secure job. If they get kicked out of the police force, they've got to go do something that maybe they haven't done for a long time or don't know how to do. They're not well-educated people. Specifically in Queensland, they were hiring people. 40% of police recruits had a criminal record. They were specifically hiring lower IQ people because they'll follow orders or they're naturally just going to be assholes. They don't care. They don't have the empathy and compassion that a more intelligent person would have. And those that do leave the force. They just can't handle it. Now that's speaking very broadly. I'm not going to tar every police officer with the same brush, but that's a general kind of rule of what's going on. So the ones that are more compassionate, they definitely feel very uncomfortable about trying to make people do something that they know is not right. So that's the answer to your question. So those are the ones that are, when you're dealing with them, you want to come at them very much on a me to you basis, not like I know the law and it's not your law sucks and all that kind of stuff. If you do that, you're already going to put them on the wrong side. And that's what happens with some people. They speak the same words that they've heard, but they're almost, the tone of voice isn't really giving the right message. It's just giving off a negative energy, which is met back in the result that they get. They don't get their way with the police officer, or they're missing the next part. I guess that's the part of role plays that they know the first thing to say doesn't work, and then they don't know how to go from there, or how to redirect back into their line of questioning or their line of where they're coming from, and they allow the police officer to take over, and then they lost their way and they go, well, that doesn't work and whatever else, but they just didn't quite have the full grasp of how to put that across, or they didn't quite put it across in the right way. So when you're dealing with those that have a conscience and they're a bit more compassionate, I recommend speaking to them very much like they're just another man or woman on the street. Be kind and courteous. I recommend even that with the not so nice ones, but you're a lot more firm with them, but still kind and courteous. Number one, because that's how we should just treat people anyway. Number two, in commerce, that's remaining in honor. As soon as you become belligerent and you're not nice to people, you swear, or you're just a bit narky at them, you're in default. You're in dishonor. So that's really why I recommend that. So the way that I interact with them is, first of all, to establish a form of rapport or connection. And that might only take a second, but I need to do that before I go into any of the lines that I would use, because the rapport or connection sets the scene for how everything will unfold. So for somebody that's got compassion and you can tell that they can think, then that's where I'm going to go. I'm going towards that part of them. Somebody that is, I got out of bed and put on a uniform and I just do this because, I've got issues and this is my way to deal with them, because I can be hard on people. There, I deal with them a different way. I deal with them very directly, like a military superior would talk to them, but still in a polite way, just very, very direct. And that's the difference. It's the way the lines are communicated. It's not the line itself. I always use the analogy of, I think women probably pick up on it more than men, but the wrong guy could learn all the right lines to say to a woman and he'll get nowhere. And the right guy can say anything he wants or nothing at all, or the dumbest thing ever, but he speaks to her in a way that is sub-communicating the right things, and she's interested in him every time. So it's the same principle when we're dealing with police, because we are dealing in commerce. Commerce has a direct relation to sales, and anyone that's ever been in a sales environment, which is everybody ever, whether you've worked as a salesman or you've been a customer, you're still involved in the sales process. And the sales process is either you sell them or they sell you. Those are the only results that can happen. And so it's how well you're able to do that determines whether you're a good customer and a bargainer, or can walk away and say no and don't feel compelled to buy something that you don't want to buy. Or as the salesman, do they sell you on why they don't need it, or why they'll think about it and walk away? Or do you sell them on why they should have this now because it's what they actually need? And that's what we're dealing with when we're talking to police and health officials and anybody else. I'll give you a really quick example just to set the scene. It wasn't a police officer. A friend had gone to hospital with an anaphylactic shock. I went to visit, and this young girl, she couldn't have been more than 20, wanted to take my temperature before I could go into the emergency unit. So she starts to point one of those guns at my head, and I was like, well, hang on, what are you doing? And she said, I need to take your temperature. I said, okay, well, look, I'm happy for you to take my temperature. Just take it on my wrist and then hold my hand out. She didn't want to do it. She refuses and gets a bit angry. I say, look, there's no reason to be angry. Okay. I know you've got a job to do. So I'm not refusing you taking my temperature. Okay. What I'm saying is that you can take it on my wrist. Okay. And she starts going off at me. Why? What are you? I said, okay, well, look, if this is a real temperature and it works, it can work on my wrist. Do you agree? And she wouldn't agree. So then where do you go from there? If somebody's not agreeing, and this is a really easy example because it's not a policeman, there's really nothing that can go wrong here, right? So the stakes aren't high. She's not going to throw me on the ground and put her knee in my back and cuff me, right? There's this 20-year-old girl who's working as hospital staff. So this is your opportunity to start to learn how to put questions in or to redirect the right way. So I said, look, I've got a duty of care to inform you that if you try to do anything at all that goes against my rights, you can be sued. Now, I won't sue the hospital. I'll actually sue you personally. And I don't want to do that because you're a young woman and there's no point in doing that. But I've got a duty of care to inform you that if you get out of line and you don't really know what your line is, I recommend you cool it and we can have a discussion. Is that okay? And she backed off just enough to start to have a bit of a connection. And I said, look, I'm not refusing. I'm happy to accept getting my temperature taken, all right? But what I need another option. Now, is there a thermometer in this hospital? And then she got angry again. She said, I'm not walking down the other end of the hospital to get. I said, okay, I didn't ask you to go there. I said, isn't there this is a hospital. Surely there's a thermometer here, right? So what I did was I kept de-escalating her and then talking to her as a human and not like, you've just got to do what I say. You're a hospital staff or anything like that. So what happened then is that she was attracting the attention of some of the other older ladies who were behind another desk. So I said, just give me 1 second. I'll be right back. And I walked over to the ladies and I said, hey, look, she wants me to get a temperature test. I'm happy to get it done. All right. I just need it taken on my wrist, in my ear, any other way, thermometer, whatever. They go, yeah, that's fine. Just go and see the emergency and they'll give it to you over there. I said, thanks very much. No worries. And I walked past the girl. I said, hey, look, I know you're just trying to do your job and it might be hard for you, but there is a difference between what you're told, and this relates directly to police. There is a difference between what you're told to do and what you actually have a right to do, and what I, as the public, have a right to accept or not accept as well. And in your best interest, I know you've got a hard job, and I'm not trying to make it any harder, but I suggest that you just brush up a little bit on that. And if somebody's speaking to you, just maybe have a conversation as opposed to, getting your back up. So I wish you a good day though. Thanks very much. See you later. And so I just wanted to end it on a positive note for her, so she didn't go sulking for the rest of the day. But also, it's a really good way to get used to this, is to talk to hospital staff, nurses, paramedics, security guards, things like that. Anyone who won't throw you on the ground and put their knee in your back and handcuff you and take you to a police station. That's a really good way to get used to, because even in that situation with a 20-year-old girl who's just like standing at the thing, who's got no authority whatsoever, there's still an element of, okay, we could be moving into a conflict here, right? A lot of people avoid confrontation at all costs. Not many people relish confrontation. And that was still a confrontation, just the stakes were low. But it still can put you into a state where you might get defensive, and getting defensive is where the errors come. So we need to make sure that if we feel anything escalating, or we need to monitor ourselves. If we're getting defensive, we need to nip that in the bud and come back to our state of being and then cool it a little. Maybe even an apology. In commerce, an apology resets any commercial default. You could say, hey, look, I'm really sorry. I think we've got off on the wrong foot here. Maybe I miscommunicated. Let me start again. Then if you do that with a police officer or a judge in a court, you'll reset. If you've gone and done something wrong in commerce, you've defaulted or gone into dishonor, you can apologize, it resets, and you can start again. And just like talking to a young girl at a hospital, you can diffuse any escalation and then start again. Rephrase what you said. Or, I apologize for saying that. That's not what I meant. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a source of authority to issue whatever, right? You can just rephrase it or bring it back in after you de-escalate and start again.
Yeah, wow, that's great to know that if you do have a slip of the tongue and you do say something, yes, I understand, and then all of a sudden you're like, damn it, why did I say that? To know that we can reset things and gather your thoughts and go again. That's so helpful, and that's a great example that you've given there, and some of the subtle ways that we can start to test our inner being and how we can hold ourselves in those conversations. Someone has asked a question. What would you sue her for specifically if she were to ask when you did say?
So there's a few things there. When you're dealing specifically with masks and things, for example, it's part of the Privacy Act, but otherwise it's a breach of civil liberties. So it's a breach of the peace also. Anytime you do anything that's in any way threatening, it's assault. So for you to point like a gun looking thing at my head when I'm not, hey, look, that's, you only have to say that's threatening to me and it's a threat. Somebody else could say, man, you could point a bazooka at my head and I wouldn't care. Why you care about that? That's not the issue. The issue is that I only have to state that I feel threatened. And most people do feel threatened if somebody's pointing a thing right at their forehead, right? So right away, that is an offense. That's an assault, and that can be charged against the individual. There's more, breach of civil liberties is just a general and generic form of charge on somebody. But it's more causing anxiety, causing distress, assault, that kind of thing.
Yeah, great. Thanks for answering that question clearly there.
I might jump in there. I thought it would be valuable to touch on the fact that there is a large percentage of cases that get thrown out at the court level and fines that are getting dismissed. That was a really valuable point that you assist us with when you were consulting for us recently, just by knowing that police may apply fines or, produce court orders, but in many cases, the judges aren't interested in those cases and they don't stand up. I think that gave us a lot of confidence in what we were doing when dealing with that police corporation.
Yeah, maybe I'll handle that. Thanks for bringing that up, because it's a good point. Because going back to what I just said about, are you getting defensive and are you becoming combative, and it's more the defensiveness. So just on that example, the context of that was that when you're dealing with somebody, a police officer, if you have like a blow-off valve, so to speak, where if the pressure comes up, you can just go back to this one thing and then just, okay, that's the worst case scenario and I'm cool with that and I can get through it, then you're not under so much pressure and you won't feel the defensiveness come up so much when you're in conversation. It's not going the way that you wanted it to go. So the key is, do feel free to use the basics and test them out. As somebody that's new to it, I actually do know people that have got it right straight away and got really good results, but it's just in general, don't expect that. Just expect to have a good interaction and to be able to practice like anything, any sport, any new skill. You do it, you make mistakes. You learn from it, you start again. You do it, you make another mistake. You get better, you move forward. And so knowing that, the worst thing that can happen is that you lose your nerve. You forget what you're really doing before you get yourself into too much hot water and you've started to tell them you're going to sue them and all that sort of stuff. And you don't even know how to do that. Just go, look, my apologies. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Look, I just really don't like what's going on. I don't even like that you have to enforce something that maybe you don't even know, you don't even believe in. And what I was trying to do today is I've been learning about my rights and I really value them. I think it's something that creates a more harmonious and safer community. And so, if you're going to issue me a fine, right, I'm not consenting to that, but I'll comply because, you're bigger than me, you have a gun, whatever. I don't want to make your day harder than it has to be. However you want to go about that, just diffuse them to some degree and yourself. And then they'll give you the court order, for example, or the fine, which you'll contest in court. Now, here's what happens with court. Most people assume that that's just the end of it, but it's not. It's the beginning of a whole other process. So there are a number of people, myself included, who've had court appearances adjourned for like a year and they've never even happened because they just fell off the books, or gone to court and the judge is just like, why is this even here? And they've thrown it out. So even if you do go to court, there's many ways that you can either A, get it dismissed before it even gets read into the record. B, the way that you do it or the way you've set it up, they'll just throw it out. Or the whole thing of adjournments. So a lot of people don't realize that you have the right to adjourn a matter. You don't even need the best excuse in the world. If you want an adjournment, you'll get it, especially the first time. So if somebody issues you an order that's for 2 weeks or a month to appear in court, you can just adjourn that. Say, look, I really need to figure out exactly where I stand with this. I need a month. I need 2 months. And then that gets read out on the day of the mention that you're meant to be there. You've generally emailed the court and then they have a look. They go through the list. They go, okay, Tom Barnett's here. And, oh no, he's not here today. He's got an email. What's his email? Adjournment. Yeah, right. Adjourn till such and such a date. You can probably do that 2 or 3 times till you get enough ammunition in or start noticing people or whatever. to make it go away. And at the end of the day, worst case scenario is you're not getting a record and you're not going to jail, you're getting a fine. Now that's another kettle of fish altogether, because that again is just an offer, and there's a number of ways to deal with that. For example, easiest way, it's $1,000 fine, right? Well, look, Your Honor, I'm actually on JobKeeper at the moment, which a lot of people are, or even if you're not, you just make it up. To be honest, they don't know, they don't check. But don't go telling like massive lies. But what I'm saying is just paint a picture for the judge. Look, Your Honor, I really can't afford $1,000 fine. It's just not within my budget. This whole Corona thing's really affected me quite a lot. I'm in financial hardship, but I would like, and then don't say but, and then you would say, I would really like it actually if you just let this go. I really don't see it as fair or equitable or just. So that's going into laws of equity. I really don't feel that this is fair or equitable or just that I'm issued this fine. I don't believe that I did anything wrong. I don't believe that this is in accordance with the federal acts. I think the police have just gone a bit nutty. You can even say things like that. And you can say, look, I really would like it if you just dismiss this altogether, Your Honor. But if you see fit that I must be fined, please take into account my personal circumstances. I really couldn't afford more than about $200. It would break me. And then I've seen people with $6,000 worth of traffic fines for unregistered, unlicensed, unroadworthy car, fake plates, fake this, harassing the police officer. $6,000 reduced to like $300. The judge just said, all right, I'll dismiss that, but I'm not letting you go on this and this. But what's your financial circumstances? And then you pled guilty. You didn't do anything. You just made this easy for me. And then I'll give you this, a penalty of a really piddling amount, like 5% or 10% of the original amount. So that's something that can go ahead. Then here, for example, where I live, you don't even have to pay it. You can say, well, I can't pay it, but I'll do community service. And you go to the community gardens and you work for $30 an hour equivalent to pay off the fine of $300. It means you do 10 hours over like 3 months, like 2 hours a week in the garden, working in the sun with your hands in the soil, meeting other good people. That's your work. And when I was doing that work, I was getting paid $25 an hour when I was doing gardening. So that's like a pay rise if I went and did that. It's like there's so many ways that you can take this one thing and just diffuse it off to basically nothing. And so when you know that, you don't have to get so defensive from the outset. Do you know what I mean? It's like this whole thread that a lot of people are unaware of how that can be de-escalated and defused and piddled out to pretty much nothing over such a long period of time, that it really doesn't become an issue anymore. So you don't have to get that grip of, oh no, there's some massive thing at stake here, because there's really not.
Do you feel like the courtrooms across Australia are all in alignment and treat things evenly, or is there differences between states and territories?
No, they're all corrupt, and there's definitely differences between states. Queensland's one of the worst. It's a rogue state. WA is probably not far behind. I think Victoria and New South Wales are better as far as getting things heard in a magistrate's court. But I do know of people in Western Australia who have had, things just thrown out in court just because of the whole nonsense of the Corona thing. So most of what that is to get into the media. You know, guy fined $1,000 at the beach for not wearing a mask. That's the police have won by getting that in the media. Whether it gets thrown out in court or not kind of is irrelevant, because no one's ever going to know. They don't report that stuff. It's really about the facade. You know what I mean? And when it gets to a court, a lot of them are like, this is kind of BS, matter dismissed, right? So to answer your question though, no, courts are corrupt, make no mistake about that. But again, if you go in with the right attitude and the right state of being, things can go well. Before I even knew what I was doing with law, I was one of those people that drove around with license plates I printed myself. I got them off eBay, and I printed my own driver's license and laminated it. And eventually I got sent to court for it. I dealt with a few police. Some were good, some weren't, but eventually I got sent to court. And the lady gave me a $150 fine for driving without insurance and a $100 fine for displaying fake plates. The actual fines for both of those are significantly higher. She didn't fine me for unlicensed driving or unregistered car or anything like that. And it was only because of the way I presented myself. It was literally just the way. I'll just give you a quick rundown, because otherwise people will go, well, what did you say? So I agreed to be in the name. Are you Mr. Tom Barnett? Yep, that's me. Normally you don't agree to being a name. Are you, is this, I'm reading you out this. Oh yeah, guilty. Yep. You don't need to read them all out, Your Honor, I'm guilty. She goes, and it's like, she actually has to read them all out in the record. I didn't know that. So anyway, I was just trying to yeah, it's all fine. It's all fine. And then they're like, is this your thing? They were trying to show me the pictures of the plates that I had. Like, yeah, it's mine. Like, as if it was, yeah, it's like, that's mine. And they kind of look shocked. Like, normally people would defend, oh, that's not mine. Do you have evidence? And I was like, yeah, it's mine. Just owning it. And then she goes, well, what have you got to say for yourself? And I went, Your Honor, today I'm appealing to your sense of compassion and common sense. And I just started it like that, like I was some town crier. And she visibly went like this. She visibly was like taken aback. And I think after that, I just kind of had her attention. And I was like, look, this is the first time in 20 years. I've never even had a speeding fine. If you ask anyone that knows me, and I do a lot for the community, said, look, I really feel this is unjust. The only reason this happened is because of the reason it happened was I hadn't voted for quite a long time. And I didn't even know I had fines racked up and my license got canceled. So then I was telling her this story. I said, look, then it's not my job to go in and fix up transport department or somebody else's issues, because I had a medical certificate for why I hadn't voted. I don't know what was going on there. That's not very fair, is it? I don't feel that that's very just for me, who doesn't do anything wrong. And now I've got a license canceled when that was an unjust and fraudulent, act against me. And I just went on with all these things, and then she kept stopping me because I just kept talking. And then, then she said, have you got anything else to say? And I said, yeah, I really don't think this is fair at all. I said, I think I'll leave it up to your best judgment, but I'm not happy with the fact that I'm even here. I think it's a waste of time, and I think it's a waste of your time. And then she went silent for a bit, and then she dropped most of the charges and gave me the smallest amount possible. And that was just from how I delivered and how I represented myself. Does that work in every situation? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe not. Because if you get one of those people that couldn't make love to his wife that morning and he's frustrated and he's whatever else, he might want to take it out on you when you get into court. But at the same time, then there's the appeals court. If it goes wrong or it goes really, look, that just wasn't right, it goes to appeals. There's always a way. There's always a way is what I'm saying. So that's why personally, I don't have the fear, because I know that it could go a number of different ways, and there's a number of different remedies for any way that it could go. So I'm not really locked into a fear mechanism of, anything. But I also don't push it too far or further than that. I know what I can do. I never told a cop I would sue them before I knew how to sue somebody. For example, I don't believe in making empty threats. Unless you're good at poker, then go for it.
I was going to say, like, these consequences really these case studies demonstrate that the consequences aren't as bad as the media or the police make it really seem. I mean, this week we heard a story of a man being jailed for 18 days because he's not wearing a mask. So this immediately puts fear into the rest of us on how we're going to go about our day. But the truth is that we do have a lot more rights, and there's a lot more confidence should it go to a court level.
That's right. And if he doesn't know how to do that himself, any competent lawyer or even get a barrister involved would have that thrown out before it got underway, because you can't actually jail someone for that. They might have written it up in the state legislation, but it's always overridden by the federal legislation, and that's the end of the story. So a good lawyer or barrister would just knock that on the head, even if you don't know how to do it yourself. But the media won't report that. That's exactly right. The media just puts in man jailed for 18 days for not wearing a mask. Everyone goes, geez, I better wear a mask. But they're not going to report on that getting thrown out of court and it getting laughed out,
Yeah, there's a couple of questions kind of relating to this aspect of what the media just throws out there. Someone says it's up to $50,000 in WA for not wearing a mask. And then someone else says, and possible arrest McGowan has made not following a medical directive, a criminal offence.
Yeah, so you're protected on a number of levels there, the Biosecurity Act, also the Privacy Act. If you've got a medical exemption, you only have to say you have one, and there's no part of the Privacy Act that compels you to give away private information to anyone, police officers included. You don't have to provide a medical certificate or the actual reason that you have a medical exemption. Now, here's the different levels to that. One, you play it as hard as that. That's the end of the story, not going any further than that. You could play it a little softer, carry around an asthma puffer. That's what some people do. They carry around an asthma puffer and just go, well, I'm asthmatic. Now, you don't have to prove that. They can't. But the fact that you've got a puffer is kind of like, a police officer just goes, well, at least he produced a puffer, so I didn't have to interrogate him. But if they're the ego kind and you just say, no, I've got a medical condition, you might be like, well, what is it then? And then make you feel like you have to get into an altercation when you don't. You can literally say, I don't answer questions, and walk off. You can literally do that. But most people don't have the nerve to be able to do that. They sit there and stay face to face as if they're compelled to keep going. And if you're compelled, it's like sitting in a boxing match, you're just throwing punches at each other. Eventually someone's going to get punched in the head. Why don't you just get out of the way? Like, you don't have to stand there and continue to converse when you're under no obligation, because there's no crime committed. They have no cause to interrogate you. There must be cause, and you must have a duty of care, which means you're a witness to a crime, or you've committed a crime, or something to that effect. So under the Biosecurity Act, they can't ask that. Under the Privacy Act, they can't ask that either. They can't issue you a fine for that. It's just easier in some cases to take the path of least resistance and not get combative if you don't have to. And even if you carry around an exemption or an asthma puffer or something to that degree, that might help you if you're not at the stage of being able to confidently knock back their offers of arrest or fines or jail or anything like that.
Would you say, Tom, I'm wondering, like, you've made that point a couple of times here, and every time it springs to mind, if we, or someone listening to this video, if there's someone that knows that they're new to this and they're like, right, this is it, I'm going to give this a go, would you suggest that if you go out and you find yourself engaging, that ultimately you should be okay with eventually doing what they say, but just test and probe and just feel what happens internally when you stand up to that, when you raise that question, just monitor all of that, but ultimately be okay and prepare to say, you know what, okay, that's fine, like, I'm sorry for wasting your time, I'll do what you say, and then just back away. Because I know a lot of people are like, nah, it's, you stand your ground, and if we move 1 inch, then life is not worth living. But that's not true, because it's a long journey ahead to the bright future that we're going to create, and we need to navigate that cleverly. Is that kind of what you're saying in terms of the total noobs?
Totally, yeah, you said that so well. Totally agree. So that's what I said before, I guess, when play it out to the point where you get really stuck and you can't go any further, then just apologize and just say, look, I just wanted to learn how to reserve my rights. I really feel that's important for you as well. I'm sure you've maybe got kids or family, I'm only doing this out of that, and they might disagree, and it's go, that's all right. You can disagree, no problem. Where do we go from here? And just let it happen. Like you said, just be okay with the fact that it didn't go your way, but be proud of yourself for actually doing more than what most people will ever do, which is to actually make a step in that right direction of becoming, self-realized and standing up for yourself, because it is an important step. And, and I don't want to make it sound like that's the way it's going to go, because there are times when it literally goes well the first time. There are times for that. So same kind of advice anyone would give: expect the best, but prepare for the worst. And I think that's kind of a really good way to approach this particular aspect of the topic in general.
Yeah, great. Just looking at questions, someone says in WA you have to produce a medical certificate if asked by a police officer. Someone jumps in and says, no, you don't. Federal overrules state. Is that just another example of they're basically bluffing a lot of the time?
Yeah.
In the hope of that intimidation, just making you toe the line.
Yeah, the federal act will always override the state, to the point where if you wanted to, you could actually get printouts of the various sections. And if you're not that confident with your words, show them documentation. Look, and just remember it, because we're dealing in commerce, don't make claims. Just go, look, it's my understanding, or it's my belief that. Don't say anything as fact. So just say, look, it's my belief that this, that, and the other. Is this right or not? And then if they say it's not, then use it against them. Really, do you have some evidence for that? Because I'm really quite sure, having spoken or spoken to, heard, whatever you want to say, I'm quite sure, having spoken with lawyers, that is the case. Now, I'm going to comply with whatever you want, officer, because you're armed and I don't want to come to any harm. Just on this, really, we need to, there you go. We need to just clarify comply and consent. So no one can do anything to you or offer anything to you without your consent, okay? Comply is completely different. So what you can do is at that point, you can say, look, officer, I'll comply under duress because you've got a gun. I don't want any harm. I actually fear for my safety, but I don't consent to this. I don't consent to you, whether they're going to arrest you, give you a fine, a court order, anything like that. I don't consent to any of that, officer, but I will comply under duress. Once you've stated that, what you can do then is say, the other thing is, after you've issued me this, I'm gonna put in a formal complaint. Now, the reason I'm gonna put in a formal complaint, officer, is that you've told me that you do have the authority or the right to do this, and that your state is not overridden by the federal law. And I really believe that that's not true. So what I'm gonna do is file a complaint. As I've said, I'm complying with this under duress, but I'm definitely not consenting. So you don't have my, whatever you want to, however you want to say that. You don't have my blessings, or however you want to say that. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to take this up afterwards. And so that is that's not being combative, and that's not going, I'm going to sue you, or it's not trying to put that in before it's necessary or without knowing how to do it. So just to recap, you can say to an officer that's offering you that, you say, well, look, we can get to that. That's one of my favorite lines. And remember, I don't like lines. I like you to understand the principle and embody that. But the principle is that you redirect what they're giving you. You don't just go with it and follow or answer questions. They'll say, you've got to do this, and it's a fine of this, that, and the other. You say, oh, we'll get to that. Now, we'll get to that just shells it, but it doesn't push it back at him. We'll get to that kind of means yes, but not right now. So I will say, yep, we'll get to that. Just want to know, though, I've spoken to a few lawyers, and my understanding, I'm not making a claim, my understanding is that the federal act overrides the state. Is that correct? And he might say, no, this is the law and I'm here to enforce it. Okay, all right. Well, look, I'm not going to get in your way if that's what you've got to do, but it really is my understanding that that's not true. So if you intend to find me, arrest me, whatever they're going to do, I am actually going to have to take that up. And I'd say it like that. No, I'm going to take this up. So I'm going to have to take this up, just because it just doesn't sit right with me. So yeah, I mean, I'll comply with what you're doing. I'm not consenting to any of this. I'll comply under duress because you're armed and all that. And, I don't want any confrontation here, but yeah, I'm going to take this up afterwards. It's not sitting well with me at all. And you say it like that, like it's like you're really thinking, like it's a conversation, not it's like, I know my lines, I deliver my lines. Now you know your lines and you deliver yours. You know what I mean? When it's conversational, it's like immediately it takes the heaviness out of the situation because it's not combative. It's like, yeah, I don't actually think so. No, I'm going to have to file a complaint. Yeah, no offense, but it's just, I don't think that's right. What did you want? My license? Just go along with it, but make it known. You haven't consented. Therefore there's no contract. That's the key. If you don't consent, there's no contract. That's a maxim of law. No consent equals no contract. So you can comply. Comply means you're going along and not being belligerent and therefore getting a fine or something or a charge for being belligerent, but it's not consent. So there's no contract. So therefore you've never agreed to anything. They can't enforce it in court or later or anything. And you can counter that with your charge against them for misleading you and lying and misrepresenting a source of authority, because the Federal Act does in fact override whatever Western Australia puts in now. And so that can be, first of all, your ticket to getting it thrown out in court without it even being heard. And second of all, if you really wanted to push it, you could counterclaim or charge the police officer with personating a police officer, misrepresenting, unlawful behavior, going against their code of conduct, all of those things. So they're just options. But the way I did that was in no way confrontational. It could even have been a little jovial or smart aleck, but it's the way it's brought across, allows you to put whatever you need to cover yourself without causing a combative situation.
Yeah, the subtleties, Tom. Sounds like you're a master of it, and I think people are really appreciating the way that you kind of express this. And it's such an important area that, like, with our community, we've done webinars with people that have said, this is the information, this is, the laws and whatever, and bang. And I think people have gone out and hit that brick wall and just been like, that doesn't actually get you anywhere. And once again, everything is boiling down to communication skills, our ability to communicate and navigate it in a way that that's more important than the actual facts or the right or wrong of any situation. Is how it's communicated. There's a couple of questions have come through. Someone asked, do you recommend filming with your phone whenever you're in these situations, or should you focus all your energy on talking with police and what to say instead?
That's a good question, because I've done both. There's been times where I'm purposely not filming this because I just want to laser in on you. And I reckon I can get the result without you feeling pressured to do anything. Because sometimes, remember, putting somebody in the spotlight puts pressure on to perform the way they're meant to perform. What if it ends up on social media? What if that you're dealing with a human being and you don't know how they're going to react? I mean, you see some footage of police and they're just like, I don't care, filming, whatever. They don't care at all. But other people actually they take on they're on the spotlight now, like red lights on and they're on, they've got to perform now. So it can go either way. I don't have a particular bit of advice for that, except to say that if you don't have evidence for what happened and you don't know how to get the evidence from them, it can go their way and not yours. So in general, it's best to record it. The way that I would do that is not to just stick it in somebody's face and say, I'm going to record you or whatever. I'd say, hey, look, before we go any further, it's one of my favorite lines as well, is before we go any further. That implies it's going to continue, but just give me a minute, which you are entitled to have, right? Give me a minute. You can't pressure somebody into anything. You can't force them. That's starting to go into the realms of assault or breach of the peace. So I say, look, give me a minute. I'm just going to record this. Just hold on before we go any further. I'm just going to record this. The reason I'm going to record it is I just want to make sure that I've got my safety protected. I've seen quite a few reports of police being a little bit going out of line. Okay, I don't assume that you're going to be like that, but I just want to protect my own safety. So go ahead. What did you want to say? And then just kind of like have it, but don't be like this, Adam. Just kind of like have it there. And it's a lot less confrontational for them. And then all you need to do is get them saying one thing and you can call them on it. So this is something I've done. I'll give you a quick example. I was dealing with a police officer who'd pulled me over in the car. I don't want anyone else to just copy what I say, okay? But I always get out of my car and go to them. If they put their lights on, I'll even brake test them. I'll brake really hard and make them brake really hard as well. Why? Because they've indicated there's an emergency. I want to find out what that is if I've got a duty of care. This is the game I play. So I go like real hard on the brakes, get out of my car before they can even get their seatbelt off, and I run to their car. So immediately, their usual source of like intimidation of walking to you while you're waiting to find out what goes on and them standing over you at your window, that's taken away. Now I go to them and I go to their window. So then I just say, hey, look, is everything okay? You all right here? And they go, yeah. I say, well, good. So there's no emergency. I saw your lights. I've got a duty of care to make sure you're okay. No, I'm all right. Okay, good. Now, it has been done where you just go, great, I've done my duty of care. I'm off. See you later. And I've done it once and other times it hasn't worked. And then Mark, who I learned it from, he's done it a few times, got in his car and driven off, and they're just like, just sitting in their car because that's the law. Okay, they need cause to pull you over and the lights are to be used in an emergency. Case law says that police do not have the powers under common law to stop or detain or question anybody without cause. So randomly pulling somebody over, random breath test, random this and that, can't do it. It's against their law. So they're technically breaking the law each time. But now a lot of people have used this sort of stuff. They don't really listen. They do things they shouldn't do. But so that's why I'm saying don't listen to don't copy what I'm saying. But what I do then, so I've gone to somebody who goes, I need to breath test you. I need to check your license. I said, well, I don't believe that that's true. Now, do you actually have the authority to do that? It's my understanding, if you are a real police officer, which we haven't established yet, but it's my understanding that case law actually says that that's not the case, that you need cause. What's your cause? Like, no, I can do this. It's under I've done this for 15 years. Okay, just give me a minute. Before we go any further, just give me a minute. And I go to my car, takes 30 seconds or so. They're not getting out and chasing me. Go to my car. He's getting out of his car slowly. That time I get my phone and I come back and I say, look, before we go any further, I'm going to record this because just in case you are telling porkies, and I'll be a bit cheeky, like telling him he's lying, just in case you are telling porkies, I just need to get it on video, all right? And then he's like, that's all right. So then, because he really believes that I'm full of crap and he knows what he's doing. So then I use that. Then as soon as he says something, I say, "Ooh, do you realize you just said that on camera?" I said, "Oh, that's not going to be good." And I do that and I smile. Like I literally play it like that. Like I'm having a bit of fun with him, which is you've got to pick your moment. That's why I'm saying don't copy what I'm saying. Got to pick your moment to do that. But I've done that. I've used the fact that I'm recording to diffuse with a little bit of like bantering, right? So, oh, I got that. Oh, that's not going to be good. And that's a way you can do it as well. You can. I'm not suggesting do it. I've just done it and it's worked. I actually he issued a fine to me and I got that fine revoked the next day because I went to his superiors and I said, look, I've got your mate here saying this on camera. I know it's not true. I knew it was when he was saying it, but I'm informing you that if you revoke the charge, I'm not going to do anything with this. I won't do anything in return. But if you want that charge to stick, I'm going to have to put this in as a formal complaint and charge for this, that, and the other. And they took it away straight away. So that's because I had evidence on video. Now, if I didn't, it would be his word against mine. And there's a rule in law that says the truth, or which one is it? It's from the Bible. It says the truth can't be told, can only be told. I'll say that again because that was confusing. The truth can only be told out of the mouths of two or more people. Now, no individual is two or more people, so you can't tell the truth. You can't go and speak something. The amount of times I've seen somebody cry in court, but Your Honor, I can't. And the judge is just sitting there like, I can't hear you. It's not written. It's not in the evidence. They don't listen to that. If that doesn't go on the record, but they did this and they did that, I did this, and they don't care. It has to be on the record, which means it has to be written into an affidavit, and that can only be done if there was a witness who can sign an affidavit, or it was on video, and then a JP or somebody can testify that that was actually what happened. Without that, it's your word against theirs, and most of the time, the prosecutor is going to side with the police officer. The police usually are filming this themselves. You can contact Freedom of Information and say, look, this date at this time, and I've got the thing, it's officer such and such. Look, I need to file a formal complaint because I really feel that they overstepped their bounds. I felt threatened and I need the footage. And then you can obtain their footage through Freedom of Information. So let's say you're at the beach, you're surfing, you don't have a phone with you, right? That's a common situation. You can go ahead and you say, look, they'll usually tell you, just so you know, I'm recording this interaction. They say that hoping that you won't do something like assault them because that's there to protect them, but it's also there to protect you because you can obtain that footage. Now, if something goes really not your way and for some reason the footage goes missing because he's overstepped his bounds or she's overstepped her bounds and that footage isn't there, well, then that's case dismissed right there because that's an anomaly within the police can't prove what happened either. So then either way, it works in your favor. But you can contact Freedom of Information and get their body cam. And I tell them, they say, look, I'm recording this. I go, I'm glad you are, because if you overstep your bounds in any way, shape or form and don't adhere to your code of conduct, I'm going to get a copy of that and use it against you. Proceed. And then let them talk. And then that puts them on notice. That's like, oh, I don't hear that often. And do you know what I mean? It's like there's so many little ways that we can establish a nice, even footing before we even get into any of the what do I say, how do I ask for a source of authority and things like that. So, yeah. Do you want to get into any of that stuff now? Like the actual, because I know we've just covered, I think the whole thing about this conversation is that these principles are more important than what you're going to say. It's why so many people try it and they're not doing it. There's a difference between trying something and actually doing it. And you only trying if you haven't fully grasped everything and you haven't embodied it. I guess that's why I'm giving so many of these, setting the scene, because it's just, this is the reason people aren't having success with it if they're currently trying. There's so many reasons that it can go wrong or not go your way, or it was going your way and you just didn't know it and you let it go off in a different direction, or you've got grounds to sue them and you just didn't know that you had grounds to sue them or know how. So quite often it's not that it didn't work. You just didn't have all the tools at your disposal to know what to do with what transpired. Case in point, somebody said recently that they went to do a border crossing and they'd seen my stuff. They're like, oh, I tried to do what Tom said on his YouTube video and it didn't work. And the police officer dragged him out of the car, but they said it's okay because now we have a litigation case. We've got a lawyer helping with a litigation case. So that is a result. Probably wasn't the most pleasant experience to go through, but the police clearly went outside of their bounds. And because they did actually ask the right questions, they just didn't know they were getting it right or how to back it up and diffuse it. It got to that situation. But because they did conduct themselves the right way, asked the right questions, didn't make claims, weren't refusing, the police had no authority or bounds to pull them out of the car. That's why they've got a litigation case, as opposed to somebody that refuses to show identification, refuses to do this, refuses to do that, talks back. Now police have every right to pull you out of the car, because now they've got cause to think that you could be a criminal of some sort and you're harboring some. They have cause. It's nonsense, but as far as on paper is concerned, they would have cause. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I think there's a lot of people, including myself, looking forward to watching a replay of this and just going through everything that you've shared there, because there's a lot of information there, and it's all in the subtleties. It's all in the subtleties how you play this game. It's not one script for everything. And you're highlighting that really well, which I appreciate. Time is flying and there's so many questions here, but I do want to get to the role play, because I know that's something that you strongly encourage. So I want everyone on this webinar to experience that. There is one question that caught my eye, which I'd just like to know your response, because it's a real thing. So someone asks, less worried about the fines, more worried about rocking the boat and flagging the system against us, with potential of family court or DCP getting involved. No reason for that to occur, but this is what I and many other parents are most concerned about. Any advice on this?
Yeah, that's a legitimate concern, absolutely. When you do know how to reserve your rights and hold your ground, that becomes less of an issue. But that is most definitely an issue for some people, because if you do go ahead and do the wrong things or say the wrong things, it can be taken as belligerent. You can be said to be, as far as the law is concerned, not fit to parent or whatever, and they will take the kids. It's a real concern. But get this sort of stuff right, and it's not a concern at all. There's a couple of basic principles for this. Number one, your kids, before they turn 18, are your property. According to the law, you own them. They're property. Now, from a spiritual sense, we know we don't own anything. We don't own our kids. But as far as the law is concerned, we do. So somebody wanting to come and take your kids away from you, they are essentially saying that I'm taking possession. I'm taking possession of your property. Now, this is my drill. You don't have any right to come and take this. If you take it, that's theft. It's mine. I own it. That's my property. And when you think of your kids in the same way, then you can have a lot more success. Don't call them children, because children's a statutory term. They're your young men or women, and you own them. Just always go back to that. Are you saying that this is your property? Do you own my kids? I don't believe you do. They're my property. Get out. You're trespassing. Get off my property. That sort of stuff. There's more subtleties to it than that, obviously, but just trying to handle the question quickly. There's a lot of law that is on your side, specifically the Biosecurities Act, the federal one. No one can take your kids. They would have to be like spitting blood with symptoms of something, right? They can't take them. This whole thing of people getting scared about vaccinations coming and mandatory this and that, I think it's a bit of a rouse. I think that it's never going to get to that stage where it'll be that militaristic of people coming and taking kids off you to vaccinate them. I know everybody's probably heard a story about that. Again, it's in the news. Even if it happened for real, which it probably didn't, but even if it did, you don't know what happened after that went to print. Did they let him go immediately? Did they have to file a formal apology? Did they get sued? Was it all a setup in the first place? That's not reported in the media. So try not to allow the media's fear mongering, which is their whole business, is fear mongering. Don't be subjected to that. Don't allow that to infiltrate you and your being, because you know what the media is, and that's how you're finding out that somebody either has been or could lose their kids because of a vaccine issue or something else.
Yeah, that's great advice. And to say that not to take that on into your being is, everyone needs to understand that no matter how chaotic the external world gets, it's still a personal decision on what we actually take in, whether or not we maintain balance and equanimity, or if we get pulled in to the roller coaster that they want us to be in.
That's how they started, though. That's the thing. This is all offered to us through the media. It's never noticed properly in the public, like a gazetted any legislation has to be publicly gazetted with a proclamation date, all of that. None of that's going through. So none of it's legit in the first place. The way it works these days is they notice us through the media, and their whole game, that's how they do it. They rely on it. So if we don't take that on as a reality collectively, then that's actually the end of the story. But then what happens, the same way somebody starts to learn this, right? No, not taking that on as a reality. My reality is that I stand in my own being and my own power. And then the police officer says, well, you have to do this. Well, no, I don't. This, well, you better. Oh, well, here's my license. So they put up a little bit of a facade, and then all of a sudden handing over ID. Why are you handing over your ID? And that's an analogy for how it works with the media. People say, yeah, well, I don't listen to the media. And then the next minute they're sharing stories around to their friends on Facebook about, oh, the vaccine's coming. It's like, don't do that. You're lying to yourself if you're saying that you're not buying into the agenda of the media, if you're still sharing stuff or listening to it in any way, shape or form. So that's why the collective is not overturning some of this, because the collective is not really not taking it in. The collective is still taking it in on some level as a fear mechanism. And fear only exists because of an unknowing. It exists outside of the beingness that we are. Fear is something outside of that. So whenever you can drop back into who you are and what you are, the fear isn't there because it's a polarity. When you move away from the polarity, it's not there at all. And so I know that that's easier said than done for most people, but at the same time, it's something to move towards regardless. Fake it till you make it, whatever. Just move towards it, because that's the only way. Everything else is moving towards the way of the media control mechanism. Specifically with vaccines, just remember, there is no legislation on a federal level. So what's happening is every time people hear about this, it's in their state. Western Australia is saying you have to do this. New South Wales is saying you have to do this. That's your clue to the fact that you don't have to do it, because nobody is saying the federal level, you have to do this. Now they're hinting at it, but it's only like offers and hearsay and everything at the moment, which means we don't have to take it in or take it on. So there's always going to be a remedy in this is like a natural law. If they want to go in and put in a control measure, by default, they have to put in a remedy. It's a maxim of law. It's a maxim of commerce. It's a natural law from a higher source. Even the people that run this sick system, they still have to abide by that, because they know there's higher laws that they'll come back to bite them if they don't abide by them. Which means that when they put something like this in, they have to give a remedy. They just don't have to tell you what it is, but they have to provide it. So the remedy, for example, for a like if you get given a bill or a fine and it's got a tearaway slip, that's your remedy because it's an incomplete check. If you learn how to fill that out, you actually complete the check and you discharge the liability for the debt. That's the remedy that's supplied. In any act or legislation, if you want to take the Crown way of going about it, it says that this act binds the Crown. It'll be in there somewhere. Now, when you can present as the Crown, it takes that away. Now, I don't want to get people too caught up in that because it is legit, but what's missing is your proof of claim. If you go and say that you're the Crown in a courtroom, you need to give proof of claim. If you don't have that, don't go saying it. So we could cover that another day. I'm not an expert in that, but I know the documentation and it's kind of hard to get. So that's something else there. But what I'm getting at is that the remedies are there. You're just not told what they are, and they have no obligation to tell you what the remedy is, but it is there. So just keep that in mind. If you feel fear creeping in because of something you hear in the media or in passing by, just know, okay, I'll take that on, but I know that within it is a remedy. I know that within it is a way that I don't have to comply or consent or anything. It's always there. You just have to find it. And the more people that do this and open that conversation, the more that'll become readily available, where people will know, or someone will know and share it with everybody else. You know, it's that this community aspect. I love what you're doing is the thing that's actually going to bring people together and to succeed. Because on your own, to be honest, it's quite hard.
Yeah, that has become quite apparent that you kind of have this thing where you're the lone wolf that can just go rogue and somehow hold its own. But the power in community, in numbers, it's a very special thing. And in Perth, we've got a lot of good people here. And I just hope more and more people come out from behind the computer screen and the keyboards and come and catch up and share that that real world connection, and let all beautiful things flow from those face-to-face connections. But most of all, we're just so grateful that people like yourself give up time to jump online, on the other side of the country, but we can still connect and learn from everything that you've been working on and helping others with. So yeah, thanks, Tom. There's just so much to get through. I reckon we've got you for another half an hour possibly. So maybe if we can just get some reasonably short answers, unless it needs to be, expanded upon. Maybe let me know, community members, if you'd like him to go a bit deeper, having spoken to him before. So navigating of the conditional acceptance notice. So there's some conditional acceptance notices that are hanging around in circulation. I might just share one on screen now.
Mm-hmm.
Without going into what is it and how it's constructed, let's assume that people know the basics about conditional acceptance and what's going on. But at what point would you suggest pulling it out? Because we've got someone in our community that went there straight away, and it escalated it, and she entered quite a grueling battle that's still in the process, and has now got the support of Serene Tefaha. But it was taxing, and that's not for everyone, and people don't want to engage that. So have you got some advice, everything that you've shared, when would you actually pull that out and say, okay, but I'm going to need your autograph and these are my terms?
Mm-hmm. Only when it's a last resort for me, because like you said, or like she found, it's like, that's just getting somebody on the wrong foot straight away. They're only going to be defensive. If you give someone a notice like this, that's only going to make them defensive straight away. And I've heard, this is actually, because you brought this up at the very start, I'll bring this up now. They'll often say, oh, is this some of that common law stuff? Or are you one of those sovereign citizens, right? They're trying to goad you into that way of questioning, that line of thinking. And you don't go there. You just say, well, I don't remember bringing up common law or sovereign citizen, whatever that is. So you just like brush that off as if it's nothing, and you take away what they're trying to use against you, because you're not a sovereign citizen, first and foremost. You don't have your own state, your own army, your own set of bylaws and all that sort of stuff. You don't have it. You're not a sovereign citizen. And you're not going in common law either. You're going in equity. You're going in commerce. So both of what they would say is wrong anyway. But you just say, look, I don't remember bringing up common law or a sovereign citizen, whatever the hell that is. But anyway, back to what I was doing. And then you go back in and you don't let them derail you. Now, this one that you're going through, it's very long. And I have read through it, and I don't like the way it's written, because it's very heavy-handed, and it's some of it's pleasing. Please do this, please do that. And it's kind of like, it's a bit contradictory in its layout and in its delivery. So I would pull this out. It's fine to use it if you don't want to knock up anything different, but it's fine to use it as a last resort. You are still legit legally noticing them. Even if it's the worst notice in the world, it's still legitimate, and they are on notice, which means they have to respond or they suffer the consequences. But do it as a last resort. This is going back to that part where you said before, hey, is there a place where you'll just get to where you just go along with it? And there is. And if you're not getting all the words right and forget to do what I just said, which is, see, I do it with words. It's like, yep, no worries, I'll comply. Not consenting, no, and I'm only complying under duress. And if you've overstepped your mark, which I believe you have, I will be putting in a formal complaint afterwards. Now, what did you want? My name, my address, what did you want? And just like help them out. But this is where this would come in. Say, look, all right, look, I'll comply under duress. I just need you to sign this. Right now, if they then refuse, say you'd call them on it. Well, are you refusing? Did I just hear you say you're refusing? Okay, I know it's fine. I'm not going to force you to do anything. Like, what am I? I don't have a gun. I'm not going to force you to do anything. But I just need to hear it again. Are you refusing? And you put it on them. You make them say, yeah, I'm refusing, or I'm not doing that. Oh, so you are refusing. Great. I'll answer for you. Thanks very much. After you've asked them 3 times. All right, you are refusing. Okay, that's going on the record too. You've refused to sign this. I haven't refused to do anything, but looks like you have. That's going to look interesting when I put in the complaint. What else did you need now? My address, my date of birth. Do you know what I mean? You're getting it in there and covering your bases, but you're also like, you're making it a speedy process where they're going to do what they want to do, which is issue you their notice or their fine or whatever. And then you're out. you're away. There's no going to the police station. There's no getting thrown on the ground and handcuffed. There's none of that. Do you know what I mean? You're taking the path of least resistance, but that notice does put them on notice, even if you haven't done it properly verbally, and then you can follow that up. Following it up is another matter altogether, because that requires some know-how and also some willingness. You've got to be willing to go through with it. Don't pull it out if you're not willing to go through with it, because it's annoying to be always, what day have I got to do my notice? Oh, yeah, what goes in it? Oh, no, did I get it right? And then do I do it registered mail? Am I taking it to the thing? They ignored it. I don't know what to do with their response. Then let's say they just ignore them all. Then what do? Do you know how to follow that up? Do you know how to put in an acquiescence by silence or an estoppel? Do you know how to file that with the court? You know, that kind of stuff. It's like, that's a lot of work. Like this lady found, it's a lot of work. That's the point at which you might want to hire a lawyer. And then sometimes you probably want to get one from out of town, because they don't want to upset the balance of the apple cart in town and going up against a police officer. And, you know, there's so many things that go along with it. So again, I'm not trying to deter anyone. I'm just trying to let everyone know it's not just like, oh yeah, just pull this out and you're get out of jail free, or just say this one thing. It's never going to be like that. And quite often it's going to require more work than you're aware of. So the point of that, I know you asked for a short answer, but the point of that is that there is no short answer to any of it. And you have to be willing to do the work. And there's nothing wrong if you're honest with yourself and you say, I'm not willing to do the work. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to not lie to yourself, because otherwise you're going to half do it and then wonder why it didn't work and tell people it doesn't work. Or then you're going to need somebody to like, oh, I need somebody to do it for me. Then you're going to have to pay people a lot of money, and a lot of people like in the private, like what I am, and I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be an expert. There's just some things I know how to do. Then it's like, I'll only really help people if I know them, or because otherwise there's a danger in saying you'll help somebody and then them still not getting it, or then you've got to take all the responsibility for what happens. And it's not really, it's a bit messy. So just be aware there's no short answer. There's no get out of jail free card. And it takes work to follow it up. And if you're not willing to do it, be okay with that and just go along with what you can do. Don't go putting yourself in hot water.
Yeah, well said, man. Well said. One thing here, if we could touch on the medical exemption process around masks. A lot of people are talking about this. We're hearing that you don't need to show evidence. You mentioned you could possibly carry around a puffer. I know people who have done that, an asthma puffer. That's worked with like general security and shop owners, but you know, with the police, where do they stand? Short answer to that.
Yeah, with the police, some of them are going to be okay, some of them aren't. They're just going to try to force it on you. I need evidence. That's where you've really got to hold your position. Holding your position is the key element of any of this. So let's say I'll just role play it like as if I'm the cop, just so to keep it short for you. Some cop says, look, you need to wear a mask. And I'll say, well, actually, officer, I have a medical exemption. Whereas you need to produce yourself. Well, actually, with respect, officer, I don't have to produce it. The Privacy Act and the Biosecurity Act say that I don't have to. And those are the governing acts. Those are the federal act. Now, if you want to try to do and heal my buddy, look, give it to me or I'm going to arrest you. Say, look, before we go any further, all right, I've just said to you that that's the federal act. Now, what's your source of authority to try to get me to do this? Are you a licensed medical professional? I don't have to answer these questions. I'm here to whatever. It's like, well, look, with respect, sir, I think you do. Now, if you're trying to intimidate me, I'm going to have to charge you for that because I'm not feeling very safe right now. I've just told you I have a medical exemption and a medical condition, and I'm aware that I'm not under no obligation to tell you what that is. Now, good day to you. And then I'll walk off. If he then touches me, that's assault. So then he'll grab me. He might grab me. He might not. But if he grabs me, I'll go, whoa. I say, I'll go along with whatever you're going to do. I'll comply, but you've just assaulted me and I'm going to charge you for it. And then you don't have to say anything else. That's kind of like a worst case scenario of how it'll go. But for me, I'm not answering their questions and I'm really directing the conversation, depending on them. If they're being direct, I'm direct. If they're like, well, actually, you're going to need to show me. So, well, actually, officer, I don't. And I'm aware of my rights because I do have a medical condition and I've been told this by my doctor and a lawyer. So with respect, I suggest that you relearn what you've been told to say because I don't want you getting in any trouble. I have a duty of care to inform you that that's actually not the law. All right. Now that's the way I would do it. But if you don't know the law so well and you don't want to make claims, you just say you do it as questions. Well, officer, is it not true that the federal acts and the Privacy Act mean that I don't actually have to give that information away. Wouldn't that be a direct conflict of the Privacy Act? And he might say, well, no, look, I'm here to enforce this legislation. That's my job. I believe I've been in this long enough. Well, look, with respect, sir, I think we have a difference of opinion here on what we've learned. So if you have a source of authority over me, I'd like you to produce it. You're going to need to produce a source of authority to tell me that I have to wear a mask. I don't have to do that. Well, actually, for the second time, what is your source of authority? Okay. Like, this is going in different ways. I don't want to like convolute it too much, but you're basically asking for a source of authority, and he'll say it's an act. Then you can go through the whole thing of, look, do we have agreement before we go any further? Do we have agreement that I'm a man or a woman? And he'll say, well, that has nothing to do. No, that's not the answer to my question. That's a yes or no answer. For the second time, do we have agreement that I'm a man? Simple question. Well, and then they'll either say yes, or let us go, look, I'm not answering any of your questions. I'm going to do this. Look, I'm not arguing with that. Okay. But that's not the answer to my question. So for the third and final time, do we have agreement that I'm a man? If you don't answer, I'll answer for you. He might not answer. Say, well, great. Your silence is your agreement. I'm a man. Now, how does an act apply to a man? Now, it might go south after that, but as long as you've got that out, he's got that's going to be either thrown out in court or you can have him charged. So again, yeah, it just comes down to how far are you willing to go with it, and what are you willing to do?
Yeah, so just important that everyone understands that we're not required to show medical exemption certificate, and you can navigate that a few different ways. And we're probably suggesting that if you're new to this and you're not well versed like Tom is, then just be prepared to ultimately be okay with pulling something up over your mouth and exiting the conversation. And what I'm noticing is when you actually imagine that that's how it's going to go down, and that okay, fine, all right, I'll toy with them and I'm just going to play with this, and then ultimately, I will comply under duress. It actually changes the entire energy of it, and it becomes more of a game, rather than how am I going to get out of this and not wind up, locked up with a heap of fines or down in the lockup or something. You just know, okay, actually, this is just going to be a game because this is where I'm at, and I don't have the skills right now to hold them off completely, but I'm going to have fun with the process of learning how to.
Yeah, and you can even just pull your shirt up like that if you wanted to. I mean, make no mistake, there is no law that says you have to cover your face. They can't enforce it, but they'll make it difficult for you. That's the thing. If you come from a place of knowing that that is the law and that it's on your side, it's a lot easier. And you can definitely very much give them, look, I really don't think you're going about this the right way, and I think this is going to come back on you. Now, I just saw quickly someone said it isn't giving your name entering into a contract. It is, but you can always preface anything by reserving your rights. You can say, look, I feel very uncomfortable and I'm going to comply under duress and threats of menace. Now, no contract is valid. I can't walk up to you with a gun and just go, oi, sign this so that you take out a loan, or sign this and you buy my surfboard or something. You can't enter a contract under duress and threats of menace. It invalidates the contract. So if you say, look, under duress and threats of menace, I'll give you whatever details you like, but I'm not agreeing to being a name and it's only under duress, that invalidates the contract straight away. So there isn't a contract after you give your name if you don't know how to, because they'll arrest people and they'll take you they'll go, all right, well, we're just going to arrest you and we'll take you to the cop shop. And until you give us your name, we're not letting you go, or we'll fingerprint you and all that sort of stuff. And that can happen, right? It can happen. Even if you're doing this to the letter and getting it right, that can happen. So just be aware of all these things, okay? And then just cover your bases. You're not entering a contract if it's under duress and threats of menace, invalidates the contract immediately.
Yeah, really good point. It's come up, one really kind of practical question is, how, Tom, would you manage a shop you need to get essentials from, but they will refuse entry without a mask and without participating with the WA COVID register? And also someone says, what about the no mask, no service? I've had that already.
Yeah, that's the easiest one, because I'll take this to be that there's no police there. It's the shop. You just need to notice the shop that under the Privacy Act, if they try to, that's with a QR code, but with the masks and things, they don't have the authority to enforce masks, QR codes, or hand sanitizer or anything. That's the government's job. A business They're a business. A business cannot enforce laws. They're not even laws, we know that. But a business cannot enforce laws. If they try, they're way out of their jurisdiction. They can be fined from $5,000 to $40,000 for trying and get up to 5 years in prison. So you can let them know that. There's I'll find one that's circulating and I'll send it to you and you can send it to your audience. But there's like a handout going around that actually states that, I think it's section 94H or something like that. I can't actually remember, but yeah, but they can be penalized for that. So make it known. Say, look, I hear what you're saying, but I have a duty of care. Duty of care is one of the best things to use because you do have a duty of care. Rather than saying to somebody, I'm just going to sue you, if they don't know, they don't have the knowledge, you're not really being honorable by just suing them because they're ignorant. So we can say is I have a duty of care to inform you that you're a business and a business cannot enforce a law. That's not your place. All right. If you try, I have a duty of care to inform you, you can be fined between $5,000 and $40,000 and face up to 5 years imprisonment. Now, I don't want that to happen to you, but I'm letting you know that that is the case. Now, and that's when they'll back off. They'll usually back off. There's been a lot of cases of shops overturning that sort of thing, taking down their signs that say no mask, no entry, all that kind of thing. Pubs are the strictest on that. They're the hardest, but I don't know why you're going into drinking in a pub anyway, really, if you're trying to get to better places in life. But if it's a grocery store, see, that's not an essential service, going and getting drunk, all right? But groceries or, toiletries and things like that, those are deemed essential items and they cannot be withheld from you. A shop can't do that. That's why they can be fined. So that's assuming there's no police officer there. If there is a police officer, it's still the same to notice the shop that, but with the police, it's then going through the source of authority, the living man or woman, and taking that line. And then even just appealing to their sense of humanity. Look, I can see that you're trying to do your job here, all right? But I think we can both agree that this has got a lot more to do with actually my safety. I don't have any symptoms. We both know the federal act says that if there's no symptoms, there's no need, or you can't enforce wearing a mask, getting tested or anything like that, all right? That's the Biosecurity Act. That's the federal act. Now, and then you can go into wherever you want from there. I'm not going to put words in anyone's mouth, but that's a way to set the scene to be like, do you really think it's a good idea to prevent me from getting food? Like, what source of authority do you have to do that? Like, don't put it on them like that, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah, and maybe start to direct energy towards growing your own food and building community gardens and things like that, so you're not having to go into these supermarkets that are selling poisonous substances.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And this is why this is such a blessing. So many people are now going, okay, cities aren't the place to be, but they never were the place to be. People go to cities for the illusion of convenience, easier access to things, better money, but that's not what the purpose of life is. And that's why city living gets people down. So people are going, all right, we don't need cities. Let's grow our own food. Let's get onto some land with a bunch of people and make it work. Like, let's get back to the essence of life. I think it's a blessing in disguise. I think it's a big favor that this system is doing, because it's like enticing the people that are going to fall into that, and that's their path. But for everybody that knows there's more to life than that, well, it's the offer to experience more to life. You don't experience more to life in a city. So that's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's like a favor, I think.
Yeah. And that's at the core of this community group. What we're trying to do is build and put energy towards those things. And that is why we're even having this conversation on how to navigate the lockdown. Not so that you can go down to Coles, get your chocolate, come back, watch Netflix, and just binge more on Netflix. We're not here to tell anyone what to do, but ultimately, the intention, like we said, behind what Tom is sharing, how to go out there and try and hold your own, but have that middle path through it, keep your equanimity, so that you can go and be a part of the building of a better world, so that you can conserve your energy and not wind up in a useless battle with the power tripping officer, but be able to get to where you got to go to implement the plans and the projects and all the things that we're trying to do, because we're not here to resist or fight what isn't working, because it's built on us anyway. We just have to simply change direction and channel everything that way. And the potential is massive. And that's why this whole thing is such an incredible opportunity. But yeah, we just need to avoid getting pulled into that argumentative, divisive, fearful mindset, which the media is doing a great job. Cool. So we covered that. Not long left. Guys, do we want to quickly cover a little bit about basically the case study that our community members went through with your kind of support and guidance?
Well, we've got 5 minutes, James, till Tom leaves us. Perhaps we could touch on some final solutions or points from Tom, and then we could cover our case study, whoever wants to hang around.
Okay, cool. Is it possible to do a role play while Tom's with us? Would you have time for that, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Maybe we'll run through that and then we can wrap things up afterwards. So if one of you two on the line would like to...
What's the role play going to be in regards to? Like, what's the police officer going to try and enforce? Is it masks? Is it a PCR test?
Personally, I think a mask would probably be the one that most people are wondering, because that's kind of the main obstacle in them going and doing something outside.
Do you want me to be the cop then? And because it's kind of easy for me to
go for it.
Talk the way that they'll talk. So, all right. So let's just say, I pulled you up like outside the front of a shop, and I've just approached you. I've come straight up to you and say, look, what are you doing out here without a mask? You know, there's a law that you got to wear the mask. Where's your mask?
I don't understand.
Well, look, I'm not asking you if you understand. Look, you got to wear a mask. It's a law. Okay. Everybody knows that now. We've got a stage. We've got this lockdown. All right. Where's your mask? You got to be wearing one.
I haven't seen any evidence that I'm required to wear a mask. Do you have that evidence?
Mate, look, I've just told you, right? You've got to wear a mask. You're not wearing one. Now, where is it? If you don't put a mask on, I'm going to have to fine you and arrest you.
Before we go any further, can we just agree that I'm a man?
No, we're not going any further. I'm not agreeing to any of that. Now, where's your mask, or I'm going to arrest you?
I'll ask you for the second time. Are we in agreement that I'm a man?
Mate, I'm not playing this sovereign citizen game with you, all right? Look, I've got a job to do, right? You're making it really difficult. And if you don't want to be fined for being belligerent and stuff, I suggest you start pulling out your ID. Like, where's your ID?
Look, I understand you've got a job to do, but for the third and final time, are we in agreement that I'm a man?
No, I'm not playing this game with you. Where's your ID?
Considering you haven't been able to answer my question, I'll just let you know that I am a man. And can you provide any? You can be whatever you want,
all right? You can be a ballerina if you like, but I'm going to give you a fine, all right? Now I need your ID. If you don't give me your ID, I'm going to arrest you and take you down to the station.
Look, I feel like this is getting a little bit out of hand, and I feel intimidated by what you're doing. So I'm going to let you know that I am under duress, and I will be providing you with my ID, but against my will.
All right, that's fine with me. So what's your name?
Bruce.
All right. So, okay. So at this point, we'll stop there. That's literally the way some police talk, because I had a lot of dealings with them. That's what they'll do. They won't listen to all the stuff you said. Everything you said was basically spot on. I think it came across a little mechanical, but at the same time, everything you said was right. There's definitely other ways to diffuse that rather than trying to continue along with what you were doing. So when the guys, because that's how a lot of police are told, they're like, mate, look, I'm not listening to any of this. All right. I just need your ID. Okay. We've got this COVID directive in place. You're going against it. You're in flagrant disregard out here. Now I need your ID. Where is it? Hand it over. Right. At that stage, they're using all of the intimidation tactics to get you to do what they want you to do. Okay. Even though they're in the wrong. So at that point in time, you can diffuse that a little more rather than just saying, well, what's your source of authority, or do we have agreement that I'm a man? Those are the right words to say. But what did you think, James? Did you think it was conversational enough, or based on how direct I was, because that's how the not so nice police are going to talk? What did you think about the interaction in general?
Oh, it was a little bit mechanical from our members' end, but that's just with practice. You know, we've been listening to you just talk smoothly for the last 2 hours, so anything is going to sound a bit mechanical. I did like, the asking of evidence around wearing a mask. I guess, I wonder, with a policeman, would you quickly just go to saying, well, I actually have a medical exemption. Is that something that you would use with police as well
Yeah,
as
yeah.
store owners?
For sure, but that just wasn't brought up. That's why I went the way that I did. But we'll continue from where we were, right? You've just given your name. So what is a good idea here? You've said you'll comply. So everything you did was right. But what I want to see is just if you've got enough there to just put something else out there now. Now you're not refusing anything. You'll give your name or whatever. But let's just see if you can pull me up on some of the things that I've actually done wrong in a way that you can kind of not, make me angry or whatever, do you know what I mean? So I'll make it easier from now on. That's literally as hard as it'll get. I just wanted people to see that that's how it can go, and that's as hard as it'll get. So, all right, you've given your name. It's Bruce. All right, Bruce, what's your address? Just give me a fake address.
26 Smith Street.
Yep, great. All right, date of birth, and now, so, all right. Now, Bruce, what I'm going to do here, all right, I'm giving you a fine for failing to obey a COVID directive. That's $1,000 fine. If you wish to contest it, you can take it to court, but I'm just doing my job. This is what I've got to issue with today. And then, I might start going on to emails or whatever. So, look, so do you understand what's going on here today?
Sorry, I don't understand, Constable. Could you explain it to me a bit further? I feel dizzy when I wear a mask, and for health reasons, I've chosen not to wear one today. But
right.
I'm
you can't choose because this is a directive, all right? So what I've done is I've issued you this fine under the COVID directives. Okay, now you've got a few different ways you can pay this. But look, that's the end of the day. I don't necessarily like having to hand out fines, all right? But I'm just doing my job. So, so what I'm looking for you to do is either say that you've got a medical exemption, or I'm looking for you to start putting me on notice a bit. You can say, look, that's fine. I understand all that. But look, I need to reserve my rights here. And I believe you've gone about this the wrong way. Okay. I asked you some very valid questions, and I feel that you're really just being a bit derogatory towards me. So I'm going to need your details as well. All right. As I have the right to ask, and, something along those lines. Somebody just put in the chat, can we say that's not a law? No, don't make a claim. Ask them to provide. Is that a law? Can you provide some evidence that that's a law? Because it sounds like a directive to me. Is a directive the same thing as a law? Like that's how you'd ask it and make them make the claim. Don't make the claim yourself. So yeah, go ahead with that one. So yeah, look, that's what the directive is. Look, I'm just doing my job. I don't necessarily like having to hand out these fines, but this is what we're faced with at the moment, and it's for the public's safety. All right, that's why you're required to wear a mask.
Constable, can I see your ID, please?
No, you've got my name. All right, it's Constable Barnett. I'm from the Perth precinct. That's all you need.
I just don't understand, because this appears to be a directive or an act, and what I've been told by my lawyer is that an act is not the law. So am I obliged to follow the law or an act? And do you have any source?
You're obliged to follow the law, absolutely. That's why you're getting this fine today.
Do you have any source of? Do you have any proof to show me this?
What do you mean? I don't have to provide you with any proof. What are you talking about? I'm a police officer.
So is this a directive or a law?
Well, mate, it doesn't matter. This is what the directive is, and this is what the fine is. This is the penalty. You're not wearing a mask. It's as simple as that. I don't know why you're arguing with me. This is getting a bit ridiculous now.
I'm told that it does matter. So is this a directive or a law?
Well, look, I don't really feel like I have to answer these questions. All right, I'm just doing my job. I've told you. So I appreciate if you stop being belligerent.
But I'm going to have to ask you for the third time. Is this a directive or a law?
All right, perfect. Well done. I was looking for you to back off a bit, but you didn't. Perfect. So now, doesn't matter the way I answer, you can answer for me. I say, look, this is a directive. I've told you. All right, this is a directive. That's kind of you're in there.
Okay. Well, I'll answer for you, considering you've been unable to answer. This is a directive. And
yeah, no, I did. I just told you it was a directive. So that's your in to actually use that against me. Yeah, look, it is a directive. I've told you this is the directive. It's a COVID directive, and you're in breach of it. All right. So you can use that against me, because remember, it's a directive, not a law. So then you can say, okay, great. So we have an agreement that this is a directive, right? Now, as a directive is not a law, why are you trying to enforce a directive?
Yeah,
something to that effect, right?
So we're in agreement that this is a directive, and you have no evidence that this applies to me as a man.
All right. Well, look, I don't understand what you're saying, but if you want to take this up, look, take it up with the court. That's totally fine. All right. You've got a right to do that.
I'm not interested in taking this up in court.
Okay. So right now that's starting to get defensive. So let's try that. So for example, if I've just been presented with that, I'd say, okay, well, look, thanks for the offer. You know, like maybe I will take it up in court one day. But what we've just come to an agreement here is that this is a directive, right? And I've got an exemption to not wear a mask. And what it appears that you're doing is you're actually trying to fine me right now for a directive. And a directive is not a law, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right? And just put them back into that. Now, they'll probably not answer and just go, well, look, mate, look, I've basically had it with you, okay? Now, you've got your fine. I've told you can go to court. This is how they talk. That's why I'm doing it. Like, this is literally, they disregard what you say and they just keep going back to what they were saying. And that's what we need to do as well. When we put the question onto them and they're like, and they don't answer it, or they say, I've told you, you say, well, actually, you haven't told me. So for the second time, and that's why you do the exact same thing. You disregard what they say and bring it back to your line of questioning. But to stay with where we are, that's when you would say, look, thanks for the offer. Maybe I will take it up in court. Now, the reason that I would do that, actually, officer, is that you actually haven't given me any identification. Currently, you're personating a police officer. Now, it's a federal offense. That could be an instant dismissal for you at best, or perhaps jail time or a hefty fine. Now, it's not in my best interest to actually make your life harder than it needs to be. But if you're going to continue along with what you're doing here, I feel there's an injustice that's happened, okay? I'm complying because you're armed. But at this point in time, I'm going to have to file a formal complaint. So I'm going to need more information than what you've given me. Now, you told me you don't have to show me your identification, but I actually believe that you do. So if you're refusing, I'm going to add that to the list of offenses that I'm going to, the formal complaint side of things. And then at that stage, they'll say this. This is what they always say. Look, my name's on the bottom of this fine thing. All right. That's all you need. You can take it up from there. That's what they will say. So what you'll do then is confirm that they've refused. So it sounds like you're refusing. Is that right? Are you refusing to show me identification? Don't let them off. That's them trying to make you go, oh, okay, I've got your name. But that's not what you asked for. Look, with respect, officer, I didn't ask for that. I appreciate that you've written your name on the bottom of this slip here, but I actually asked for identification, all right? At the moment, you're still personating a police officer. I don't know you haven't just mugged somebody and taken that outfit, right? Anyone can write a name on the bottom of a piece of paper. You haven't shown me any valid form of ID. So at this point in time, you're still personating a police officer. I still feel threatened. That's an offense. That's assault. And I am going to be taking this up with your superiors. And maybe I will use that court to file some charges against you. Like, that's how I would finish it up. You might not want to do that. You might not need to. I was just seeing if, where you'd want to go. And this is how it works when you start role playing. Like, you get to a point where you're a little bit stuck and then the words come out defensively, and that's fine. But what you got was actually really far, because you got right to the point of covering yourself for having given you details, which was good. So that in any normal situation will be enough for you to either get that fine dismissed or even press some, maybe not press charges, but at least put in formal complaints and make their life a bit harder. So overall, obviously you've done it before, so that's maybe somebody else wouldn't get that far because you did that really well. The only real feedback is just that the mechanical nature of it is the natural progression of learning it, and it's in the head. And then the more you do it, it becomes a bit less mechanical as it gets more into the body. And then you get a bit more creative with the way that it comes out. And that's the natural progression. And it's just a matter of practice and repetition over time. So overall, well done, because you got a lot further than most people in the world would.
And Tom, in that situation, would you stop and film that? So in his situation, he would go, just for my safety, I'm gonna film this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You don't even have to. I've told people to say that a few times just for my safety. That's just a way to diffuse things a little for the individual, not for the police officer. So that makes some people feel more comfortable to say that as they pull out a phone. But you could just say, hang on a sec, just wait. We're just going to record this. All right, continue. And then while it's recording, because you do need to notice them like they do to you. Look, we're in a body cam here, sir. Going to record this interaction. It's recording voice and visual. So just so you know, and they'll say that. and that's them noticing you. So now that's they've essentially got consent. And even if you say, I don't consent to that, they'll probably still film it. So likewise, if you say to someone, look, I'm just going to film this, I just need to know that you're not going to do anything dodgy or for my own safety, however you want to say that, but you just notice them, you're filming. And then they might say, I don't consent to that. And you say, well, continue. Like, I'm not turning off my camera. I have every right. You're in a public space. I have every right to film you. If you don't want to talk to me, you don't have to. I didn't ask you to talk to me. You know, that could be you're out. Well, I don't answer it. You know, they say, well, I don't consent to that. And you say, well, I don't answer questions anyway. So see you later. Walk off, you know. Not enough people walk off from an interaction. They stay waiting for a reply when quite often you don't have to. You know, women are good at that too. Some guy goes up and gives them their best pickup line. They're like, oh, I'm not interested. And they walk off. They don't go, I'm not interested, and just keep looking at him like an invitation to give him his second best line. It's like, they don't do that. I'm not interested. And they break the energetic connection, right? And I've done that with police officers too at things like, most notably at festivals, where they're trying to pull people up to do stuff like, oh, look, I don't answer questions. Thanks very much. And I just keep walking. They're not going to stop you. It's like, I don't answer questions. Thanks very much. And I don't stand there looking at them, waiting for them to draw me back in. I break and walk.
If I don't tell them I'm going to film and I film it, is that still valid evidence?
No, but it's outweighed by anything they do that's really wrong. It can be admitted as, I forget the term, but there's a term for it that's like a different form of evidence. And it's like, you did the wrong thing, but their wrong was more wronger than yours. So then, that's kind of how that works. Also, everything's recording all the time anyway, pretty much now. Anyway, you could just go, oh my God, I actually left this on. I was before you came, or my pants turned it on. I've had that. Honestly, I've actually had something turned it on in my pocket, and I've recorded myself saying something really that I shouldn't have said, and it's posted it into a group chat on a thread. My phone did that. And so, like, a video recording of just like the inside of my pants, but my voice saying, like, I think I was singing or something. I was like, but it was and everyone's like, what's this? What are you doing? What's this? And then like thinking I was playing silly buggers, but actually my shorts did it. And so that's a legit thing. So no one can actually say that you started recording. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, this is where you can get, there's so many subtleties as to what can be constituted as, I didn't notice you, or it just happened to be recording. That's not a lie.
Would a good effort to dismiss this mask wearing thing just simply be that, am I under arrest, officer? And if not, I'll go on with my day?
Yeah. But instead of saying that, you say, or am I free to go? Am I under arrest or am I free to go? For some reason, it's best just to ask the question still, because then if they say no, it's like, really, I'm not. Okay, well, what cause do you possibly have? What crime have I committed? Because if not, you're detaining me, and that's a false detainment. Now that's an offense, and I can charge you with that. So rather than say, I'm going to go, I do that in certain situations. Look, I don't answer questions. I'm off. See you later. Right? But that's different from when you've gone into you've started to contract by having a conversation, which is saying, look, am I under arrest? If not, I'm leaving. That's a bit different. So it's better to say, am I under arrest or am I free to go? Famously, that Eve Black girl who went through the roadblock in Victoria in a van, she did that. Am I free to go? I'm pretty sure, actually don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he said, oh, just get out of here. I don't know that wasn't a setup or whatever, but either way, that is a common thing. Am I free? Am I under arrest or am I free to go? No, you're not under arrest. And then, am I free to go? Yeah, you're free to go. That's actually pretty common. Different when there's this massive push to have this whole charade going on, they might not be as inclined to say, yeah, you're free to go. In which case, you've got to hold them to task. No, you're not free to go. Really? Are you detaining me, officer? That's a false detainment. You haven't given me any cause or any evidence against me. Now that's a chargeable offense. Are we done here? That's my favorite finishing line. Are we done? I've used that in court and I use it with police. Are we done? It's also what I use in arguments with people. It's like, well, you did this, right? Are we done? Are you finished? And then it like shuts them up and then I walk off. It's like, it works with police. Not, are you finished? Don't go like that, but are we done? Are we done is a really good, very direct and firm way to end an interaction. And even psychologically, it can put into the other's mind that it is done. Are we done? Yeah, we're done. I've used that with police, and that's what they've said. Not always, of course. There's times when they've gone, no, we're not done. And they've arrested. All right. But I've covered my bases saying, well, that's a false arrest, a false detainment. I'm going to sue you for assault. I'm going to sue you for all that sort of stuff. And I've charged them, and I've got settlements and things. So it's like, it can be done. But again, I'm just outlining what the possibilities are, not what you should go and do. Just be okay with wherever you are. Don't expect to get to the end. And I'm not the best at it either. Like, there's people that are, the people I learned from are like 20 years ahead of me in the game. And they know things that I haven't even thought of yet, you know? So I'm just sharing what I have experienced myself, and the experience of helping some others, and also through the shared experience of people that have learned sort of from the same groups as myself. So in not every situation will it always work the way I've said, but as a learning experience and as a personal journey, all of this is worthwhile, because our place here on earth isn't to like get everything right or never get arrested or never get a fine. Our place here is to experience things to their full degree. And if our experience calls for spending a night in a jail cell or having to learn how to deal with a fine or something, then that's the experience that we've called for. And there's value in that. And the purpose of life is to go into each experience and get deeper into ourselves through that experience, not in avoiding stuff. I'm never going to have an interaction with a police officer or a nurse or a whatever. You know, go into these things knowing that all experiences are of equal value. Getting thrown on the floor and handcuffed in front of everybody or being let go is an equal experience to the higher self. They're just experiences. There's no better or worse, only to the ego that decides my life should be easier than this, or I shouldn't be treated that way. Only to the ego is it better or worse, but to the higher self, it's not. So just that can just help when you're going into experiences where I do that too. I was driving around, like I said, with my own plates on, and some days I was just tired. I'm like, oh, I just don't want to deal with anyone because I'm tired. So that's my ego saying that. So, but then if I'm faced with something, immediately I go, no, let's have this experience. Like, literally say to myself, let's have this experience. And I go into it. And as soon as you go into something without resistance, it loses a lot of the power over you or over the situation. So this all plays into it as well. Remember, it's not just a matter of words. It's a matter of the intention and the energy behind it as well.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, beautifully said, Tom.
Thanks. Is there? I've got to go in about 2 minutes because I've got a consult in at 6.
Yeah, I see the time ticking over. I'm glad that we started a little earlier because we've managed to fit quite a bit. I guess unless the community members have a suggestion, the last thing to wrap it up is, you know, I'm interested to hear, in your opinion, Tom, what would be the types of projects that we as individuals and a community should be embarking on at this point? What would you prioritize?
Prioritizing food security for one, because it is likely at some stage, or it's a possibility that there's going to be shortages. And like you said earlier, don't rely on Woolworths and things. Though that is like the problem. The more we're feeding the problem, the more we've kind of been asking for it. I did a live stream actually called Reality Check recently. It's on my YouTube channel. And I'm going to do another one about China, because everybody knows now that China is kind of infiltrating Australia, but they're not infiltrating Australia. They've been doing it for decades. And we've invited them in because we like getting the cheapest crap sent to us from China, and not, you know, it's like there's so many ways that we've invited it in. So my holistic advice to all of this is support or create what you want to have, what you want to live in, the life, the place, the environment. So don't support all this stuff that we don't need in the first place. It was always a slave. It's a slave system. It's always been get people hooked on something that they think that they need to rely on. Welfare, shopping centers, supermarkets. That's not how it is. We get food from the ground and from animals. We do that by getting it ourselves or by being knowing a farmer. So that sort of thing. So really, it's getting out of this mentality of convenience and having things supplied for us and supplying it for ourselves, because otherwise we can only ever be getting benefits and privileges and not really holding on to our rights. Those are benefits and privileges, right? Which means they can be taken away. And so if we don't want that, we need to do it ourselves. And we're more than capable of doing it. Everybody has the ability to do this, to live on the land, to fight, to do anything. It's all in our DNA. It's just asleep because we've never needed to use it in our comfortable modern day life that's been born into a slave system, but it's there and it can wake up really quick. We adapt so fast to our environment, it's ridiculous. So being put in, don't fear putting yourself out. The amount of times I've gone like on purpose into being homeless or into a new endeavor, I never had any idea of how I was going to succeed in it. But when you do that, the body or the mind or the soul, whatever it is, reacts to the environment and switches on what it needs to. And we all have that ability. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to dream and create what it is that you want to create. Get together with people. This is one of the biggest lessons as well of this whole thing, is that we can't do it anything alone. The system made us look like we could do everything alone. Here's your own car. Here's your own air conditioner. Here's your own microwave. Here's your own bank account so you can do whatever you want. It's like, that's an illusion, because without that, without being able to pay people to do stuff or whatever, you can't do any of that on your own. No one's going to make you that car. No one's going to, you just can't do it. But what you can do is become part of a community. And for those of us that are switched on, we're seeing that more than ever. This is the time to get back into the way we're meant to be, in tribe with each other and in community, because together we can create a lot and do it really well. And if we serve the community or the tribe that looks after all of our individual needs without anyone being left behind. Whereas in our current system, there's always people left behind. So it's everything about it is better. So if we start connecting more in person and getting tighter community units together, like exactly what you're doing, and then from there, looking at what do we want to create and what does that look like? How do we get there? Do we pool together resources? Do we just go after it and figure it out and see what happens as we do it? But either way, we're moving towards something that is not what we have now, because what we have now actually isn't that great. It might seem all right because, hey, I can go surfing on the weekend, I can do this, I can get a burger whenever I want it, but that's not necessarily the core of life, and that's not necessarily giving you the full satisfaction that you can get from this life, because that comes as a reward for effort and time spent introspectively and growing internally. And that's almost the complete opposite of what our system does. It churns everything externally, and we never get to get that stillness, for example. So yeah, essentially get into tribes and communities, look at getting together some kind of self-sufficiency with food, especially, and water, and go from there. See what you can create as a result.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Tom. Love that. Love that to wrap it up. Tom's going to leave us, but for anyone in the audience that wants to hang around, we are going to talk a little more with the community members and how they kind of navigated their period of forced quarantine and were able to avoid the PCR testing. So if you'd like to hang around, we're going to dive into that, but we will let Tom go. And the comments throughout here, man, everyone just is in awe with how you hold yourself and the way that you explain things, and that layer of subtlety that you've highlighted for everyone here, going beyond just, you know, having a printout of the facts, but actually engaging on those subtle levels is just one of the best things I've heard in a really long time. So I'm super grateful for your time, bro, and maybe more can be done in the future. Is there anything where people can connect with you, or anything you're working on, any project that they might be able to jump on board and support?
Yep. Sure. Yeah, I've got the website it's just like, it's all going to be free still, all the content. It's tombarnett.tv. We're just putting it together because Facebook and YouTube obviously they're very censoring and everything, and pull stuff down or cancel your channels. So all my stuff's going on there. And then currently the mailing list is open. You can just sign on to that, and then you'll get a notification when it goes live, which should be soon. We've just had a lot of issues with the security of the platforms we've been trying to use, because they've been pulling other people's stuff down after they say it's all secure. So we're just making sure it is secure before we launch it, and it's getting to that stage of actually that happening. So that'll be soon.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. I think you'll have a big influx of Perth crew jumping on board that email list.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we look forward to tuning in there and just learning more from you, man.
Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad people got something from that. I'll tune into YouTube and see what everyone talks about afterwards as well when this goes up. I'll share it for you.
Thank you, man.
Cool.
Thank you. All right, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. See ya.
All right, and the webinar continues. That was amazing. I'm just so blown away. Unreal. So many layers that you could go into about reality and how to approach it. And and all the different levels. And that's where we really need to, as the truth community or the activists and all of that, we need to be addressing those other layers. It's not just about, you know, learning something and going out and touting it and smashing people over the head with it, but all the different subtle energetics and communications. Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you to you two for lining that up.
I think it just really illustrates the power of these role plays and working together with others to, you know, nut out and experience that experience rather than just like throwing yourself there and then there's all this like, oh crap, what do I say? So I think just learning that, taking your time with it, working with others, and being the police officer and being the person at the other end as well is super valuable. And something that we both really learned from Tom is that it all comes down to applying the principles in the role plays.
Yeah, and you can see even in that role play there, you guys having practiced it before, like in the moment, and we're probably all thinking, we're listening and we're like, oh, I'd go here, I'd go there, and then you're just hitting these mental walls, and that's just a role play. You know, that's right. With like Tom, who's, you know, just this friendly dude on there. You're not even faced with, you know, the figure of an officer in a uniform and anything like that. So it's definitely something I think as a community we'll try and organize more of and encourage different Zoom calls and small groups if we can meet in person.
I think we should start getting together a group for Perth, Southwest, and bringing the people together face to face. I think that's more valuable. If we can't, we should at least do a Zoom call, and just watch others as they do the role plays as well, because that's super valuable. Like you said, oh, I would go here, but also when you're in that moment of time, it's so different.
Oh, I can only imagine. I look forward to freezing on the first role play that I engage in. But yeah, just on that point, so what we'll do in a moment, guys, we're gonna hear the story of our community members. They were kind of working closely with Tom because of some forced quarantine that they were forced into, returning interstate over Christmas. So they're going to talk about that and the middle path that they found. And really, that's the story that kind of gave birth to this whole webinar, was the fact that, wow, this Tom has really helped people see a middle path, a path of least resistance that allows, you know, those of us that are trying to create a better world to continue on in that creation rather than get bogged down in a battle. So we're going to go there quickly. And I think I just wanted to share on something that was said there by our member. It was the idea that, you know, there are already projects happening. There's the Freedom Farm here in Perth. We're trying to grow our farming skills. And something like that, although it may not be, one project may not in itself be the answer to the specific issue that you're most concerned with. But just by engaging, you start to develop real world heart-to-heart connections with people on a similar wavelength. And when you're there, say, planting veggies, but then you're talking about the vaccination issue, then all of a sudden there comes space to discuss childcare co-ops and different things. And that all comes spontaneously out of the moment when you're spending, you know, 6 hours up in the bush with your hands in the soil, learning how to plant. So it may not be a gathering for vaccination specifically, but whilst you're there, the things that you talk about and the relationships that you build, the connections that you form, that is how we get to where we're going. If you're going to wait and say, well, as soon as there's a project that offers a clear solution to that issue and that issue over there, then I'll click my fingers and join. Well, no, we need people to blaze that trail now and start to create those projects and let one project form the idea and discussion for the next project and the next project, and then link it all together. That's the process of how we're going to create the community, the tribe that Tom spoke about. The tribe doesn't just appear. And I just really want to emphasize that the tribe does not just appear. It takes time and effort and nurturing by each individual. So I just want to encourage everyone to really commit to following through with a lot of the times what people say they want. And we're in Choosing Freedom here, we really need people to action those things so that we can get
So
to where we want to
valuable,
be.
I was just noticing some comments there from people who are looking for more information about the Freedom Farm and how to get involved. So maybe, Lou, you could send the instructions on how to join the Slack group, because the Choosing Freedom group has gone away from Facebook and onto the private platform of Slack, where the Freedom Farm is being discussed, and along with many other projects and resources that are valuable to what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, definitely the questions, shoot them through to info@choosingfreedom.network. We have come off Facebook and we're on a private platform. Personally, I've been wondering, there's so much activity on Telegram. Should we also get something on Telegram? I'll run that past the crew and we'll see. But just connect with us if you feel like you want more questions around the Freedom Farm or Freedom Cells or our next gathering, or what other projects are happening, or I'm in the Southwest, is there anyone down there? You can get to us through the info@choosingfreedom.network or admin@choosingfreedom.network. But don't let the momentum from Tom's incredible sharing fade away and not connect with us. I just want to make that point.
Yeah, that's right. And one thing that Tom did say to us was, after our experience, I think we'd spoken like a week and a half later, and he goes, "Oh, how you guys going?" We said, "We're going great." And he goes, "Have you still been practicing?" And the answer was no, because, you know, we just got on with our lives. But really, it's a muscle that we have to keep training and we have to keep working at, because it's just going to atrophy otherwise. And then we get into a situation where we're just like, "Oh crap, like I used to know this stuff and now I've forgotten." And I think it's just something we have to consistently be working on together as a group, and really commit ourselves, like you were saying, to actioning this confidence and this empowerment to just relax into it and know how to stand our ground, have no fear. Yeah, I think that they're the keys, really, and hold them accountable.
Yeah. So do you guys want to just explain or share, your story as much as you feel comfortable, and people can learn from that?
Absolutely. So we went interstate over Christmas and came back 2 days prior to receiving a phone call from the police and an email and an SMS to say that, due to us being in Victoria, we're required to quarantine at home for 14 days and take a PCR test on day 11. So that was quite a shock. It immediately sent us into asking questions and seeking support. And I have to say that the Choosing Freedom Slack group was a really good platform to reach out and feel like there's a team behind this, and there's a bunch of people that really care. And we were able to navigate the correct information that we needed to work through the situation. So after that initial process, we learned about conditional acceptances and notices, and how we would handle ourselves, and we spoke to other Choosing Freedom members that have been through similar situations. And we're also made aware of other people in the media that refused the PCR test and ended up on the front page of media papers and things like that. So there was that element of how to navigate the situation. You know, there was perhaps large at stake, but
I'll just add there, one thing was we thought, okay, what have other people done in this situation? What was their result? And all of the results didn't sound appealing at all. They sounded quite alarming. And we hadn't heard anyone get a good result that got out of it unscathed. And so that's when we reached out to Tom, and he said, "Okay, guys, it's not a simple answer. You've got to play your chess pieces right, and you've got to learn your stuff, like really learn your stuff." And that's when we thought, all right, we've got 14 days here, so let's learn our stuff.
Yeah. So a major element of our strategy was not to raise attention to ourselves, because what we'd learned through others' mistakes is that by immediately sending a conditional acceptance or refusing to quarantine or to take the test, which was 11 days away, that immediately kind of put up a red flag, perhaps to the police, to come and harass. and create an example out of people that are sovereign citizens and, you know, not complying. So we decided as a strategy to use that first 11 days as to do role plays and homework, and prepare for what we may need to face on day 11 when the PCR test was to be done. So we did about 3 phone calls with Tom Barnett, and 3 times a day we'd pretend to be the policeman at the front door, knocking on the door and going about the process of navigating a conversation. And a key element that we learned through the process was that treating it like it is business and it is commerce, and understanding that these police officers working for police corporation was simply like salesmen at the door trying to sell us a washing machine or something. So by treating it in that respect, the SMSs were just like spam messages. The emails, you know, didn't need to be regarded because they are trying to get us into contract. So with that mindset, we did the role playing many times, and had a game plan for whichever way it was going to go. We had cease and desist notice printed out that we would serve to the police if they were to incriminate themselves. Like Tom explained, after you've asked them 3 times to provide their source of authority over us as men or women, if they continue to claim that they did have authority, they would be falsely incriminating themselves. So we had the cease and desist notice that to put them on notice that they are breaking the law, and that they would be severe consequences for them. So yeah, learning how to handle that situation. So a key part was the police, hypothetically, the police come and knock at the door. Our game plan was to say, hey guys, we're in the middle of some important work. Can you please come back in 1 hour? Because we're demonstrating that we are the creditors in a way, and they are the debtors, and the game's in our hands, not by playing by their rules. For example, like Tom said, if they were to pull him over in the car, he ran out of the car and went to their door and said, hey guys, this is an emergency. So our position was, hey guys, please come back in an hour, we're busy. And in that time, we would prepare to know that they would come, and that one of us would answer the door, and the other one would start filming in the pocket of the shorts. So it's filming and recording audio, not to alarm the police that they have a reason to be suspicious of us. And then if things got out of hand, that phone would be pulled out of the pocket to explain that we're recording for our own safety. So over 11 days, we developed a lot of confidence in what we were doing. Consistent practice, and speaking to Tom and watching a few other YouTube videos of other people speaking to police and how they go about it. And day 11 rolled by, and we got SMSs and emails saying that we hadn't turned up for our PCR test, which was to be undertaken at the hospital. Requested that we go and undertake the PCR test at the hospital, and we simply had never consented to doing that, so we weren't going to participate in that. Obviously, quarantine was 14 days, so we finished up day 11, 12, 13, day 14 rolled around, and we hadn't had a visit from the police. We had a few emails saying that we hadn't arrived, but we didn't respond to those emails, and we deleted the SMSs from our phone to demonstrate that we hadn't received it, and that's just spam, and we're not consenting or contracting to those offers to do a test. Day 14 rolled around, and we were finished our quarantine period, and we had decided that so we booked an appointment with the local GP, and we went to get a medical certificate from the local GP to give proof that we were healthy. So one of our game plans was that should we be asked by the police, why aren't we getting a PCR test, we would diffuse that by saying we really care for the public health, and we really want to make sure that we are healthy at the end of this quarantine period. So we've gone out of our way to book an appointment with the local GP to demonstrate that. And so we went along and we asked the GP that we are healthy and we're no risk to the community, and then do we have coronavirus? And she said no, no, no. So we were all witnesses to that, and we had it written down in medical certificate to carry with us should we be asked. So having covered all bases, we finished up the experience having been unscathed and no visits from the police, and this really demonstrated that they are very much relying on consent and very much relying on that fear to comply just for us to go ahead and do it. So by navigating the situation, we were able to avoid the PCR test and be armed with, or armed with information on how to speak to police if we need to.
Yeah, someone has asked, but how did you prove you didn't have coronavirus? With your GP?
The GP did temperature test, blood pressure, all the standard health screening that a GP would do for a new patient. And we didn't tell her that we were in quarantine, and she was unaware that there was anything like that going on. We just said, hey, we're here today just to understand that we are healthy and at no risk to the community. And she, as a qualified medical doctor, was able to write that down in a medical certificate and prove that we had no health issues and we were no risk. So we kind of navigated the system to not comply to a test, but also demonstrate that we're healthy.
And you were able to get something in writing, is that right? You said that just for peace of mind of like paranoid family members, she did write something that you were going to show if need be.
That's right, and we just had the that medical certificate. If the police did come and ask why didn't you get the test or whatever, we would then show, well, as this is a concern for public health, we've gone out of our way to make sure that we're not at risk to ourselves or the public. And I've even got a temperature test now, officer. I'd be happy to take that right now, which we have an oral thermometer. So we were going to do that right there and there and say, oh, look, it's 37 degrees. That looks like we have no symptoms. And, the World Health Organization has also stated that asymptomatic carriers, asymptomatic cases aren't carriers of the virus. Something like that. I can't quite remember, but, So.
Yeah, so through Tom's advice, he was really making sure that we understood that if the police was able to leave that day having done their job, we were prepared to say, hey, mate, I understand that you're doing your job. I also understand that public health is very important and we care about it as well. So we've gone out of our way to get a thermometer and we've gone out of our way to book a local appointment. So you're not agreeing to do the PCR test, but you are meeting them halfway or showing them some respect that you care about their job, so they can walk away and feel like they have had somewhat of a win.
Yeah, and that's that middle path that I think many people are not aware of. And it's one that's a lot less turbulent and taxing. And it just so happens that you guys, like you said, they never came back. So, some of that wasn't tested to the end. But that's the point, is that they never came back. And you don't know whether they're going to until you're passing through those moments and it doesn't happen. But just be aware that the media is making us feel that, you're guaranteed for this and that. And so, do we just grab our weapons and jump straight into it from the get-go, or can you play it cool and find the path of least resistance, which you guys did, which I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, thanks. I think, like Tom said, the police officers don't even know what they're doing day to day, and everything's always changing. What happened to us, was different to what happened to someone else. and every circumstance is always kind of different. I think it always comes back to the principles of how you hold yourself and how you speak their language as well, and always putting it back on them. I think at the end of the day, like, that's the key. And if we've got those tools, like, you know, any good martial artist will hopefully not ever have to use the tools like Tom said. But if we have the tools, we can kind of find this ability to just kind of relax into it and know that at the end of the day, you know, the worst that could happen might not even be as bad as what we think it might be from all the media that gets thrown at us.
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's so valuable that from here we use these tools and we keep exercising these muscles, and everyone on this webinar no doubt wants to join forces to make sure this information is valuable and we feel empowered and we can go about our day whilst creating this new world that we want to create. So it can feel lonely when we're out there by ourselves, but in numbers and, you know, behind the scenes, the support is so valuable. I know down in the Southwest, we want to create regular catch-ups and training or practice sessions in person. And I've already seen a few comments on this chat about a fortnightly Zoom call or something like that, that joins the entire WA area into the topic. So I think it'd be valuable if people want to be a leader, and there's a leadership role for different categories of what we need to learn to create a new world. And if those people want to email through to to Choosing Freedom email and suggest how they may be able to lead a group and the knowledge and the skills they want to share, it's a really good start to formulating these freedom cells, which has proven to be successful around the world, and is an example of decentralized action.
Yeah, so this Saturday was actually meant to be our first community picnic for the year up in Perth, and a big part of it was to start to organise members into freedom cells for those that were interested in doing so. Freedom cells, they're basically where you form groups of 8, and you have kind of specific areas that you kind of form competency and security around. And 8 is the number where beautiful things happen. It's the maximum creativity that stems from a group of human beings before it gets too crowded and, you know, unnecessary conflict arises. So it's a really good way of organizing in a decentralized way, so that if whatever something were to happen to one of us or to step away or for whatever reason, you have got that small group of 8 and you can really rely on that intimate real world support. And at the same time, that group of 8, that cell, can connect with a nearby cell who also resonates, you know, with some of the projects that they're working on. And ultimately, maybe the whole Choosing Freedom, you know, all 200 people on our email list, you know, the goal would be that they are all part of a freedom cell and that we're working as one large matrix, and everything is running in a decentralized way that could never be shut down. That's what we need. We need that autonomy. We need that independence, right down to the individual level. And things start to go wrong when we try and function as one really large group, you know, with a small group of organizers, and it just can't go on to the level that we need it to go to in order for us to really excel and thrive. So that was what we were going to do this Saturday. Who knows what's going to happen, what will be allowed, what we'll have to you know, be coerced into wearing if we do go, all of that. But either way, it is something that will require some online time. So keep an eye out for webinars that'll be addressing the Choosing Freedom, the Freedom Cell concept specifically. And I know down in the Southwest, people are keen to get that going. So that is a big part of the next step, as well as these role play groups, so that we can begin to just form some level of peace and ease and the grace that Tom walks with as he navigates all of that. I'm still in awe of that. And it goes deep. You can see that he's not just there, a guy that, you know, knows a little bit about law. He's someone that is really exploring the depths of who and what he is and what this reality actually is. So I love that vibe, and I think it's something, a level that we should all be thinking on, because, you know, if we're just on this surface level fighting government on the apparent reality, butting heads with that, then technically they probably win, because we're never actually exploring the depths that they want us to never know about. So yeah, hopefully Tom can join us with some more stuff. I know that we kind of cut into a bit of his time there, so maybe there's ways that we can organize in the future and chip in and really get that, because I think that he's an amazing teacher. He's doing amazing things, and I'm definitely happy for an exchange there, especially as we try and harness these role players and develop those skills that he's obviously quite well versed in.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we wrap it up soon? And probably I think it'd be valuable to send a final shout out to the Slack group for anyone that's not joined yet. I know that it's difficult to go onto new platforms and learn new communication strategies, but it's proving very valuable for me and for those who I've been speaking with, to really connect. And most people in this webinar are probably already there, but if anyone isn't, the email address has been shared to request how to join, and that's admin@choosingfreedom.network.
From there, we can instruct and send you an application to get onto our private platform. Take the time to answer some simple questions. Let us know why you're wanting to join, and then you can jump onto our private platform where we can talk about all this good stuff. It really is a challenge to get people off Facebook, something that's so familiar, and get them onto a platform that they're not familiar with. We understand that. So if you can just really make the effort to form those new habits and get used to the platform, it runs very similar. It's a really smooth platform. So once you're on there, yeah, it has got really good usability, and we can plan more of this stuff. Really put energy behind what it is. That's the beautiful thing right now, is that yes, there's a squeeze, and yes, we feel that our rights are being threatened, and you know, all of these things, but ultimately it's a continual nudge to form the things that are more natural to us, to get back to tribe, to get back to community, to do things in a decentralized way, to not poison our bodies and the planet, all of those things. I know you know what I'm saying, but again, just know that the squeeze it's only ever a nudge to get us to take the more organic path. So I look forward to planning and working on more things with everyone in the future, and connecting with those that stumbled across this webinar. Community members will say goodbye.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
Cool. And thanks to everyone that attended today. We'll share this on YouTube, and please continue to get it out. You can see how valuable Tom's information is. So please circulate when it does come out. Until then, take good care and be happy, be peaceful, spread love, spread dharma, not fear. Peace.